Happy Monday to you. It's George Brauchler with you right here on 710 KNUS. If it sounds a little different, it's because I'm back in studio with the man himself right through the glass here. His name is Billy Thorpe. Billy, quick question. I should have asked this before we started. Why are there two light things in front of me, but only one beyond?
Oh,
I don't know if that needs Lewis. If you're out there, I don't know if one needs to be on, and the other, if two of them really make me look extra white, because I am already extra white.
That's fine.
But so, man, first off, let me just say this: the weather today, it's going to be a little chillier. This summer, I mean, this weekend was ridiculous, and it was so nice outside. 40 degrees today will be the high. We're going to climb up to 60. Oh, wait a minute, Billy. I don't know if you've seen this. I'm holding it up right here.
Yeah. No, what?
Whatever this is,
Yeah.
has nothing to do with a Monday. It starts on a Thursday.
Oh my God, I didn't check.
And goes through a Wednesday.
Okay.
It is some kind of, you know what, folks? We don't really know what the weather's going to be like. I think it's going to be good out here. We feel like it's going to be extra special. Now, look, on the one you sent me digitally, it works. So it says Monday, 61 degrees.
So it didn't say.
No. So 61 degrees. 62 tomorrow, 61 Wednesday, 60 Thursday. I mean, it's like a clothing optional week until we get to Friday when we get some afternoon rain. And then this is nuts, folks. If you figure it's 61 today, the weather voodoo artists say Saturday and Sunday will be at 38 and 37, respectively. And snow.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, and it's a drill weekend, and that makes it less exciting because you don't get to hang out and do all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
But Billy, update us if you would on you had like 2 months off or something like that.
It was nice. I had lots of other stuff I had to do. Busy work and things and covered hundreds of yards and miles over the states.
Yards and miles.
Yes, I just went all over the place. I had to go up to the mountains, went to Fort Collins, lots of busy. So I wasn't just like relaxing and doing the easy stuff. But however, this weekend, so it was the previous Wednesday, the first day I took off. My one of my daughters, Katie, turned 18. So she's 18 now. She's an adult, and we had
Congratulations.
Thank you. Little spooky to have another adult.
Just let her know now. Every criminal act will bring her to adult court now.
Yes.
There's no juvenile court.
Oh yeah, we talked about that one, and unfortunately, we had a surprise party on Saturday for Katie's birthday, involving family and friends, and unfortunately, though, Katie knew about the party. It was not a surprise to her.
What?
No,
why? How?
No. Well, see, this is kind of how I work sometimes, and I just got to be honest.
Here we go.
Yeah,
pantless.
So I sent out earlier, late last week. I sent out a text about, hey, we're going to do this murder party after dinner. We're all going to go to dinner for Katie's birthday, and then afterwards come to the house and have presents and cake, and we'll do this little murder party because she's wanted to do it. Spencer's wanted to do it. So I was setting it up, sent out invites. There was a group text that was already involved, a whole bunch of people. Yeah. So I'm responding to that, and I'm telling people this is what we're doing. I kind of lay out the evening, and then Saturday morning, I'm going around and I'm cleaning some stuff up, and and my wife's like, yeah, and then asking me, well, what about this? I'm like, well, it's. And she's like, why are we doing this? And what about the party? I'm like, no. Well, and she was kind of curious about why the party was after dinner. She goes, couldn't it be before dinner? I'm like, well, yeah, but I asked about that earlier in the week. And she looks at me and she goes, no. And I did. We talked about it. I go, there was a text message in this. She goes, no. And I go, no, wait, look. And I grab my phone and I say, right here on the phone. And I go through here. See, it's the kids, and it's your mom and your dad and my mom and One name was missing, and a very important one. My wife. She had no idea that I had been planning this thing. So all of a sudden,
so it was a surprise for her.
Exactly,
a little bit.
Yes, a little Saturday morning surprise. And she's looking at me. She goes, "I was wondering why you're doing all this weird stuff." She goes, "I didn't understand." She had this disconnect, and she goes, "I keep," and it's wonderful because it's this a wonderful example of the difference between male and female communication. Because if it was you and I, you would have gone, party? What party? What are we talking about?
Yeah.
She's hinting, well, you're doing a lot of cleanup. What are we cleaning up for?
Yeah.
Like
a
the
little
party.
more passive aggressive.
It was so passive. And she kept asking these questions. She goes, I asked all these questions. I'm like, but I'm a guy. I don't understand that. And so it was very funny. So she jumped in and everything was good. And everybody came back to the house. We went to, what was it? India's restaurant, the oldest Indian restaurant in Colorado.
What's it called?
India's Restaurant.
Oh, well, they've hidden it right in the name.
Exactly. But amazing, really, really good. And then came back to the house and did the murder party thing, and that was really nice. And it was fun because it was some of the kids' friends, and then me and my wife, and then my parents and in-laws, and they got to see some very funny things about both my mom and my in-laws, because everybody has to play a character, and they really got into character, and that was
hold
cool.
on. So was it like a period piece too? Like, what was the theme of this thing?
It was 1960s, and we are in a museum for the unveiling of a brand new T-Rex skeleton, and someone is killed.
What?
Yeah. So that was the thing behind it.
All of the exhibits come alive,
no.
and there's Ben Stiller.
Yeah, I wish. And a little tiny Robin Williams.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's we did what we could with the house. But the funniest part was I had to be the host to kind of move things along. And so at one point I say, "Oh, excuse me, I hear a noise," and I go, "Ah, I found a dead body," and I scream and make it really silly. And I made it very dramatic, and the dog got very super excited. So all of a sudden she's like, "Dead body," and she's bouncing around in the room like, no, crime scene, stop jumping. And she's like, "What are we doing? What are we doing?" I'm like, "You're dancing on the dead body. This is not helping the whole theme here. This is you're breaking the whole mood." And so yeah, she didn't help, but it was fun. We had a lot of fun.
And how late did it go?
Everybody went home around 9:30, 10-ish, so not too bad. Yeah.
How many people total played?
11. So not a bad one.
That's not bad. Did someone win?
Yes. And one person was able to guess the actual murder. And the whole thing is you've got envelopes on the inside. So the murderer isn't revealed until the end. There's some clues and some other stuff that are done, but then the murderer is revealed at the end.
Who set this? Did you set all this up? So you were like the murder master or whatever it is? Or?
Yeah. And that's the whole thing. I had been spending the week doing all these things, texting people, telling them the character, giving them hints, talking about things. And then my wife's like, "What are you doing, you moron?" I'm like, "But the text messages." And she's like, "I didn't get them." And I'm like, "Yes, you did." "No, I didn't. I didn't have you on the list."
Yeah. Why did you delete yourself from these texts?
Yeah.
This is somehow not my fault.
Yeah, exactly. And part of it is, okay, I didn't check. I assumed that she was on the list because I just responded to a previous thread. And then she asked it, and then she looks at me and goes, "How come it wasn't on the previous thread?" I'm like, "You are going to have to talk to your father about that one. I'm going to wash my hands of this one." So I was able to pass the buck.
Nice. But I appreciate people washing their hands.
Yeah.
So did you get a chance after that to get up yesterday and watch the big football games?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I spent the afternoon doing that one. Did some stuff in the morning and had to do some radio stuff. Made sure I cleared the deck because it was an hour earlier than normal. We started at 1. Yeah. So I had to make sure that stuff was buttoned up and all done and sent them to the satellite.
Who all watches at the house when you're there?
Normally it's just Max and I. That's really
same thing. Me and Graham.
Yeah, that's normally we're the ones. I mean, my wife checks in, and the other kids were curious that why they were still playing football. They didn't know the season was still going.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's the thing.
All I can say is I speak on behalf of maybe 90% of America when I say seeing the Chiefs win and go to the Super Bowl. I was just like yawn, like, oh my God, I can't stand. First off, they were the better team. I'm not disputing that. Mahomes is just ridiculous. Kelsey, ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the Ravens, who should have won that game in Baltimore, at the end just melted down.
Yeah, they did. They really did. There were so many things that just little mistakes by Lamar Jackson. There were times which I was disappointed.
How about the Flowers guy?
Oh, yeah.
You make that great catch. You're at the 9.
Yes.
And you can't check yourself enough not to get up and spin the ball on him in one of those unsportsmanlike ways that sets you back. It keeps you from the end. So, like, what's wrong with you, man?
And then that
sissy boy runs over to the sidelines, and he's so emotional. He cuts his hand.
Yeah.
Now he goes on to make another great play after, but like, what's with these guys?
It's like, control your emotions at that point. Be in the moment and understand what it means and not get into trouble. The other one was beginning of the second half, Baltimore's driving, and I understand the desire to stretch and to get into the end zone.
Oh boy.
But he's stretching to come over and whap, ball gets snapped out, and Kansas City gets it back. And you're like, or goes into the, gets a touchback. But come on. It's just one of those things like, don't do that. It's
it wasn't good, man.
No.
I can't stand seeing the Chiefs in the Super Bowl again. This is going to obviously be a repeat of the one that they did before without, Purdy and McCaffrey that they had to face. That's true. But, they already beat the Niners in the Super Bowl within the last 5 or so years. And I was happy to see the Niners come back just because it made for a great game.
Yeah.
Like either storyline would have been good.
Oh, it would have been good. I mean, I would have at this point, so I got no dog in the fight. It would have been nice to see Detroit just because of the story and to see, and what I always, and what my son and I were talking about is that idea when you have that first Super Bowl type of idea. Now, he wasn't around in the 70s, but he was around during some of the John Elway era. And so he understands some of that and understands some of the idea of what goes on. So the idea of when it is your first or first in decades, how special that is and how it changes the dynamic inside of a city. When they were able to pack the Detroit Stadium and it's an away game.
I know.
You only were able to, I mean, if they would have done that for the Chiefs away, maybe half full, maybe not the same thing, maybe a third, because they've been there. It's regular for them. Detroit, it's something different, and I felt for those fans.
And look at what the city's going through with the Pistons, man.
Oh yeah,
that's a team that's had like 3 wins in a decade or something. I mean, it just feels ridiculous. So that would have been a good storyline. But I mean, listen, McCaffrey's a local kid.
Oh, that was wonderful too. And
John Lynch,
John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan.
I like seeing those connections, man. I like seeing that stuff too. So either way, that was going to turn out well. But to be up 17 and then to get back down by 10, and even if they closed the game, it was like, what happened in the second half, guys?
Yeah, there were adjustments that were made, and Kyle Shanahan changed some things. And again, and I like the fact that McCaffrey is going to have a chance after beating Carolina to get a ring. That really helps. And so it wasn't like, oh, this sucks, Detroit lost. I was like, it would have been nice to see Detroit, but I'm just as happy that San Francisco's there. And it just continues that I still want the Chiefs to lose. So I'm still a 49ers
I want the Chiefs to lose so badly.
And gosh, wasn't it great that during the talk of, when we're looking at head coaching hires, that we just couldn't persuade Kyle Shanahan to come here because he didn't want to follow in Dad's
why would we
footsteps.
do that?
That'd be silly.
And we stuck with John Elway instead of John Lynch. Why would we make a change?
Yeah.
Also, I'm so tired now of Travis Kelce, and I like that guy. I don't dislike him, but he's so overexposed. And if I see one more shot of Taylor Swift and him anywhere, I just feel like turning off the TV. Like, I can't stand this anymore. I don't know why it's grating on me, but it's grating on me.
I appreciated what I liked is I liked the on the field kiss after the game. That was okay with me, but the overexposure and the focus on Kelce hurts me. I think they dialed back some of the Taylor Swift shots because guys, the people in the truck, they're doing the NFL thing. We don't have to have a shot at Taylor Swift every time Travis Kelce does something. That's not that we don't care. I don't care. The fans don't care. So stop doing that.
He's also, I mean, look, Travis Kelce ends up scoring the first touchdown of the game. I mean, and it was
a beast move. It was awesome.
Look, the guy's a great player. I think I'm more interested now in seeing Jason Kelce. I mean, that guy turns out to be the real character out of the two of them. And I mean, just based off of what he did after the game they won up in Buffalo just a week ago. Yeah. I mean, that dude is.
Did you hear about what was it in Buffalo? Yeah, it was in Buffalo, I think. Jason Kelce saw a girl down in the stands.
Yeah, I saw the video.
They had and she went and got her. I'm like, that is awesome. Yeah. And I appreciate that, Jason Kelce went shirtless and was cheering and was going crazy. I appreciate that because, and I won't turn this into a soccer conversation, but fans of my Newcastle Magpies are
shirtless.
Yes, quite often. In fact, we have one gentleman that probably outweighs Jason Kelce by maybe 125 pounds that has part of the logo of the team tattooed right across his beer belly. And he and he oftentimes shirtless there in the stands and shaking it all. And it is
unbelievable.
Again, no shame. So I appreciated that. I appreciated Jason doing that. Although his wife talked to him. That she's
but if you watch that Kelce thing on Prime, his wife's pretty cool cat. Man.
Oh yeah,
pretty cool cat.
But after that, she's like, okay, Jason, I know that you're gonna go to the next game. I know that Travis is probably gonna win. Please, can you keep your clothes on? Because I still have to go to the country club. I still have to go to the salon, and I have to explain that. Could you just please stay clothed?
Somebody on social media put the sound on top of him when he was standing there in front of the club when he was reaching back yelling. They played the sound from the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. It was perfectly synchronized. Everything went,
I bet.
I mean, it was.
Oh, that was wonderful.
I don't know. It was ridiculous. But that, so wonderful. Super Bowl in a couple weeks, and we'll live with now 2 weeks of hype on all this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And you know why the Super Bowl is in February now? Because remember, that was a change a number of years ago.
Because of Groundhog Day.
No, because
Valentine's Day.
the NFL had, and it's very, very clever, and it's worked wonderfully. The NFL looked at the calendar, and what they decided was we need to have some sort of an NFL type event or something related to the league happening every month of the year because of the media and the talk radio, and oddly enough, because the NFL started their own TV station. So because they have their own TV channel, they realized they need to have stuff to cover. That running old games didn't exactly pull the viewers. So that's one of the reasons that the Super Bowl now occurred in February. Is they didn't really have something that was a marquee, appointment watching in February. That's why the calendar sits.
It's smart.
Yeah, it is.
It's very smart.
Very, very smart.
Listen, one thing we didn't do was, and I've just been peppering this in here and there, is the history stuff on this day. And our buddy Aaron from the show here is texting me in these things. Many of them pornographic. No, I'm kidding. They're not. But there is some stuff here that's worth noting. Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven, was first published. Did you see that?
Yeah.
W.C. Fields, born in Philadelphia in Lord, 1880.
Jeez.
This is ridiculous. Some of these things. The American League of Professional Baseball Clubs was organized in Philadelphia in 1900. Wow. Buddy, this is right up your alley.
Yeah.
1886, guy patented the first practical automobile powered by an internal combustion engine. He's a German.
Oh, yeah. Daimler-Benz. Yeah.
Carl Benz.
Yeah.
Carl Benz. Can you believe it?
First internal combustion engine.
1936, Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb among the first players elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York.
Wow. Mercedes-Benz is actually responsible for many of the safety features that we have in the cars, and they don't patent a lot of them. Like some of the.
Why don't they patent them? They can make some money.
They want everybody else to be able to use them. They don't want us to die. So there are a lot of
Why
things.
Do they
in there.
care?
I know. You'd think
most of the people that are not dying are not buying their products.
That's true. Probably repeat customers or something. I don't know. But things like certain attention seat belts and things like that, those are all Mercedes-Benz things. Now, there are lots of other companies that has done other things as well, but it's interesting.
There's got to be a way to do the tension seatbelt thing better. And I say that because every time I seem like I need something that should be arm's reach where I have to lean forward, it like catches and I'm like, I'm just trying to get the thing. And no matter how many times I lean back, I'm like, come on, you son of a.
My wife's car, when you sit down, you close the door, and then when you start the engine, the seatbelt then tightens up on you once that happens.
What the hell kind of car is that?
That's what her car does. Yeah. So you do, and then it's like a little hug. It's like, whoop, I have you. You're safe.
Is it a hug?
I like to go that way rather than trying to slowly kill me. So I figure I'm going to go with the positive.
Here's one that I think Aaron sent in specifically for you. 1966, Brazilian football player, soccer player, somebody who was one of the most prolific goal scorers in the sports history, was born in Rio de Janeiro.
Pelé.
What's the name?
Pelé.
No, it was Romario.
Oh, it's Romario.
1966. I don't know who Romario is, but I thought you would.
Remarkable. Yeah. Romario is a remarkable goal scorer. He's absolutely fantastic.
Oprah Winfrey. Birthday today. I know you've got a special cake for him.
Oh, yes.
This will actually touch upon something that we might talk about later today. Iraq, Iran, and North Korea were called the Axis of Evil by GWB on 2002.
That's nice. That about the Romario thing's got me like walking down memory lane. I hadn't thought about Romario in years, so that's why I didn't even pull that out. Wow. Thank you.
For sure. And then a couple of the other ones here. Coca-Cola was incorporated in Atlanta, Georgia in 1892 on this day. Little did we know.
Yeah.
And then
once with an illegal drug.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you got to get your customers, your repeat customers.
You got to get them addicted.
1964, a movie directed by Stanley Kubrick, starring, I'm letting you guess here, George C. Scott and Peter Sellers. That's right, Dr. Strangelove.
Dr. Strangelove.
In 1996, the 6,138th performance of this musical was held in London, surpassing the record of Broadway's longest-running musical, A Chorus Line.
Ooh. What year is it?
1996.
Ooh, 96.
That means it had been around a long time.
Yeah, exactly. See, I don't want to go with Cats. I want to go with either Les Mis or Phantom. Let's pick Phantom.
Brilliant call because it was Cats.
Oh, nice job. Yes! I'm rocking a Monday.
You nailed it.
Yeah, the thing that I'm looking at is Cats made sense, but I'm like,
it made too much sense.
Well, it also...
You just talked yourself out of it.
The other part is this. It makes sense, but again, there are so many other theatrical offerings that actually have things like storyline character development.
Yeah,
An
the
actual-
Cats one doesn't. You're right.
An actual
Absolutely.
plot.
They're little vignettes of cat stuff that I
Yes.
still don't understand.
There's no plot.
No, I didn't know that when I went to
None.
see it on Broadway, by
Yeah.
the way. Went to see
Oh,
it
yeah.
on Broadway during one of the 80 years it was on there
Yeah.
because I felt like it was a thing you had to do.
Yeah.
Like when you're in Amsterdam, you do the two things. You
Yeah.
do the Anne Frank place and then you do the red light district.
Yeah, exactly.
This was like you got to go to Broadway. You got to go see that.
Yeah, you see Cats.
Awful. Worst thing I've ever seen. I don't understand it.
The thing is, I think there are certain scenes that I appreciate. Again, the finale, the memories and stuff, but the overarching play is awful. It is really, really bad.
Look, even the Nutcracker has a bit of a battle between the rats and the the Mice King and the
key to the Nutcracker. You only see the first half. Go home at intermission. Second half is irrelevant.
There is a part, by the way, where you think it's a natural conclusion, and then they're like, no, wait, there's more.
Yeah.
And you're like, what more can you do?
Because Nutcracker, I don't understand the Nutcracker because the Nutcracker is the first half is story. The second half is everybody gets to dance. That's all it is. There's no story in the second half. Everybody gets their chance to come out on stage and dance, and I fall asleep.
The other thing, other things that are good for the first half, second half, not as great. In my opinion, Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
The first half.
Yeah. That's very
fantastic, man. Up until the time that Arlie Ermy or whatever his name is gets gunned down by Pyle.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Once they get in theater, it gets a little wanders a little bit. It's almost two movies at that point.
It is like two movies. You're right about speaking of Stanley Kubrick. Wasn't Full Metal Jacket Stanley Kubrick? I think so. I'm going to look it up right now while we're talking about this. I'm almost positive that was also a Stanley Kubrick piece because that guy is just a little off.
Yeah.
Clockwork Orange?
Just a little bit. Oh, Clockwork Orange is amazing.
Stanley Kubrick was Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah. His Clockwork Orange that's amazing.
How in the world is that 1987?
That's crazy.
What the hell?
Yeah.
But I was still in high school.
Jeez.
What in the world is going on?
I remember that when the whole big thing was, you got to dress and act like a droog. Yeah. I remember that.
Blanket Party 2 with the soap and all that. Big question for you though is what's the big story for you over the weekend? You didn't get a chance to talk on any of the stuff since you left us on Tuesday when we closed down operations. Because I know I was getting texts from you in the morning.
Yeah, you were.
As you were pondering, this is the stuff we would have, could have, should have talked about on the radio. What's that big one?
Because I got up early. I got up early in the morning. Oh, that's a tough one as far as. Okay, here it is. Now this is not something that I think is necessarily overarching and not going to be top of mind for many people. But for me, the thing that I found the most interesting was this is going to sound really bad. The way I set it up that way, it's like not interesting, but the conversation surrounding it. The AI generated Taylor Swift porn. I found that very interesting. All the conversations around it.
What was it like?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Kidding, of course.
I mean, I know. Again, I was like, I don't want to, have no desire to see that. But the conversations around it I found very interesting because it is artificially intelligence generated, because it is absolutely disgusting, and it changes how we appreciate and what we're looking at as far as what AI has the ability to do, because this branches out into almost anything, from movie stars to politicians to there's so many different types of awful applications. And I thought it was interesting that people got angry when it was about the Taylor Swift thing. And the idea of, we got to pass laws. And that's the part for me is I'm real curious about how those laws develop. What do they look like? How do you enforce them? And again, if that AI, whatever it is, porn or anything else is generated outside of the country, what do you do with it? And the conversation I had with a friend was this really should be almost more cultural. Is I kind of look at it and go, yeah, you can look at that and say, okay, I understand that, maybe you were slightly aroused by seeing the AI Taylor Swift porn, but you know that you're really just spanking it to a cartoon, right?
Oh,
you understand
my
that?
goodness.
You understand that you are just looking at basically Marge Simpson or some other thing that has been drawn or generated by someone else.
That's not quite Marge.
Yes, it is. Are you aroused by the blue people in Avatar? I mean, they're fake people.
Well,
so that's the idea.
I'll be honest.
Yeah.
The Zoe Saldana character, really,
you're like,
this is how I know.
Love me, little blue lady.
I can't be racist. I can sort of be into the Avatar girl.
I now appreciate Captain Kirk on another level.
The green lady.
Exactly. Yeah. So I honestly think that there should be almost a cultural shift towards that. I think that would be more effective. than trying to legislate it away. But it's an interesting problem and a dangerous problem. And so that for me was the one that I don't think has a right answer, only wrong answers. And so that was one that kind of spun around in my head because I found it interesting to think about over the weekend. Yeah.
That is an interesting one. And I think the outcry is different just because it's Taylor Swift.
Absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
This stuff's been out there for a bit now. She's not the first.
However, with fairness, if it would have been AI generated porn of me, there would have been laws the next day. They would have been like, no, this harms the kids. No, we can't see this. There would be people saying I had to pour bleach into my eyes.
They'd be pulling the plug on all the AI.
Exactly.
This is what it can do, people.
Exactly. We warned you of the danger.
You can't unsee this.
Yes, exactly.
This is forever.
Yes, forever. The therapy that is involved with this.
Meanwhile, the presidential thing continues to
that's interesting.
Take shape, but it's not. It's the shape's been taken, man. It's over at this point. And I know there are people that are still predicting that somehow we're going to pop Joe out and plug in somebody else, whether it's Michelle or Gavin or somebody. I don't see that happening short of whether it's made up or legitimate, some kind of a medical episode.
Yeah.
Leading up to the convention.
That's the only reason.
That's it.
And for everybody that says that, they're going to just, Joe's going to walk off the stage and they're going to bring somebody else up. What I would say is, what would you say if they did that to Trump or did that to any other nominee? And again, I understand that the loyalty to Trump, but let's say they would have done that to McCain or Romney or anybody else. The issue that I think the people that are buying into that conspiracy are forgetting is the fact that they're assuming the Democrats would go, oh, that's fine. We didn't get to choose. We didn't get to pick. You didn't ask me. You're just going to anoint a candidate. That somehow the Democrats, regardless of if it would be the most perfect, most wonderfulest candidate in the world, that somehow that voting bloc would go, oh, it's fine. I disagree just based on the functionality of how the process is supposed to work. I don't believe that.
I love the idea that, and we've seen this play out here at the state level.
Yeah.
I love the idea that all of these people are going to participate in caucuses and primaries and make their designations and all this other stuff. And then a handful of people that get selected to be the delegates at the assembly are going to, at the last minute, be like, we're going to do something different.
Yeah. I know what you said, but I don't care.
This feels a lot like our own Republican Party caving in the entire nomination process, which, by the way, could happen. So I don't know if I don't think the court opinion has come down yet, but the Republican Party is suing the state and the planet because we have this open primary, in essence open, where you can be unaffiliated and vote, and they've gone and all this other stuff. If a judge were to rule in their favor, it is very possible that the entire nominating process for Republicans and, frankly, Democrats would all take place at just assemblies. No more ability to get onto the ballot through petitions. All other Republican primary voters cut off, because how are they going to administer this thing? They have no money to do this. I remember at one point, it may have been on this show, somebody was saying, they were telling me some idea for this one. I said, how does this play out? And they're like, well, there'll be different houses designated in neighborhoods and people can drop off their ballots at someone in their driveway or something. I'm like, you trust that more than the lockbox thing over by the clerk and recorder's office? Like, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't trust that at all.
I love that our solution to election integrity is we're going to go drop this off in some dude's driveway. That's the solution to the election integrity problem, is we're just going to pass this off to some person in a driveway. That's the solution?
But that's what happens if we
come on.
That's what happens if we end up doing this thing where and I don't know what the court's going to resolve on this. And then, we had Kent Theory on to talk about how it kind of feels like it makes this court case largely irrelevant, because it sounds like if Colorado voters approve these three measures, the way we do elections is going to change. This will be the last year we ever do precinct caucuses.
You know what's going to happen, though, is, and again, because we've seen this Colorado voters for, we got to approve 3 of them. We're not approving 3 of them. We're going to pick 2. We're going to pick 1 or 2. And that's what's going to happen. And then people are going to stand around and go, and you're like, you didn't think this through? There should be some sort of a plan, because I am willing to bet, I really think that we've got more than a 60% chance of the voters picking 2 or 1, but not all 3. I just don't think they're going to pick all 3.
As long as they don't pick the ranked choice voting one, the others I can live with. I could live with a top 2. where then at least one of them has to get 50% of the vote. I could live with a top two.
Yeah.
But this ranked choice voting thing is so weird. I'm afraid that voters will get confused with it. That's one. That's been feedback where it's been tried in some places. And also, I don't love the idea that even though it's unlikely to happen, that somebody who is nobody's first choice could end up being the representative.
Yeah.
Like, nobody liked you enough to make you number one, but you win?
Yeah.
Like, in what sport is that?
Yes. And if we think about that, and this is a really good analogy to that, is the Democrat nomination process of Biden. Biden was never anybody's first choice.
Yeah.
He was barely anybody's third choice. But by attrition, he just kind of stuck around and goes, I'm still here.
I'm still here.
I'm still here. And eventually he became the nominee. Now, did that become the strongest nominee the Democrats ever had or anything? Probably not if you talk to them. But it became the person. And that's what I would hate. And I really would hate the idea with ranked choice voting. What bothers me is this is the person that I want. And if that person doesn't win, I should get a chance to go back and look at whoever that group is and vote again. Don't make me choose a second or a third, because what if the second and the third are against each other? And I go, actually, given the fact that if the second and the third are next to each other, I want the third, not the second, only because this person's not in the race.
That's right.
I want to be able to make the choice. Don't assume what my second, third, fourth choice is. That's what bothers me. That's what I don't like about it.
That's what bothers me too. But the top two thing, even if people freak out and they're like, but Denver will only have 2 Democrats. It's like, listen, folks, Republicans ain't winning Denver.
No.
Okay, let's just put that aside.
I have my entire life, Republicans have never won District 1. The entire time I have been above ground.
It's like it's like World War I. The Republicans are in a trench, and then every couple years we need a candidate, and they do like short straw, and they send Casper Stockham up over the hill. Just get gunned down, and it's not his fault. The dude's incredibly brave to do it, but dang, I mean, so if you had the choice between a Democrat and a Republican, Democrat's going to win. What if there was an ability to vote for an insane Democrat and a less insane Democrat? Then, and I know that a lot of that sounds redundant. I'm kidding. But you could at least vote for someone that you're like, okay, that person will only burn the garage down, not the whole house. And that gives us a chance to protect the rest of that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
The thing for me about the reason that I would be I'd be amenable to the top two. It's not my first choice. But the reason I would be like, okay, I'll hold my nose and I can deal with that, because I think that has more of a moderation effect in solid districts than other ranked choice voting. And what I mean by that is inside of Denver, if you had, again, the 2 Democrat candidates, you can really make an argument that you can get some of those Republican votes into a more centrist Democrat, and you can keep the really crazy stuff. Yeah, the really crazy stuff from happening. The other thing that you can do is you can take out the people that are just functionally beige wallpaper, like Michael Bennett, because then you can get a person that's a Democrat to go, dude doesn't do crap. Yeah. How about you let me in here and we're going to do, but again, inside that district, it would have to be a more moderating
Can you
voice.
Imagine though a top 2 for U.S. Senate in Colorado where there's no Republicans? That could happen.
Oh yeah, it absolutely could.
A top 2 for governor?
Yeah.
2 Dems?
And it would be crazy.
Griswold, Weiser? I mean, holy crap. That's like you're getting drunk when you're filling out your ballot because you can't believe you're doing it.
But again, and the only argument against that on the other side is Heidi got stomped. I mean, with respect to her, I like her a lot as a person. Yeah. She got stomped. So it's not as if it was like, ooh, if we have 2 Democrats in the ballot, it's not letting Republicans win. Republicans didn't have a shot last time, and this next cycle is going to be tough. That's got to be it. So I think with the top 2 choice, in my mind, it puts more onus on the party actually putting forward a good candidate that can win in that district, rather than someone that is just a
the moderating voice. Thing, though, true. And I know listeners are thinking this. They're like, well, wait a minute. So in a Republican place, there's going to be 2 Republicans and one's going to be more moderate than the other. Yeah. I think that's real. I think that could really happen.
Yep.
Don't know what that turns out to be in the ballot, but at least people have a choice. Yeah. I know what I forgot to ask you about as we're running out of time here you did not get to weigh in at all on the very first CD4, CD8 forum. I don't know how much you watched of that or read about it.
I read a lot. Didn't watch anything, but read a lot.
Yeah, and no offense taken. Go ahead.
No. The thing is, it was just long. I looked at the video and went, oh, that's long. I'm like, I can't just do that.
It's long on the 9 that were up there because otherwise you're just doing yes, no answers, and ain't none of those people can do yes, no answers.
No. And that's the problem. What I did is I went through and I found it fascinating the reporting, because that's how I'm coming at this from. Is I looked at how it was reported and how it was covered, and again, it was all focused on Boebert because she has the name ID. I thought it was very interesting. I thought the straw poll afterward,
oh my goodness,
was very striking. It shows a lot of headwinds against Lauren, but again, that's a finite group of people that would show up and be ultra engaged. Does that then spill over to the larger electorate? I'm not certain about that.
Don't know yet.
Yeah.
Although I am less confident in my prediction than I was before. Still very confident, but less confident just because of some of the things I'm hearing in the background. But at the end of the day, I keep reminding myself the people I engage with are people who are engaged, in the process. The vast majority of people who are going to get ballots and vote, they're not engaged. They're just going to see names on a ballot and be like, oh, look at that.
Exactly. And the other part that I looked at was I thought it was very interesting that all the Republicans were so enthusiastic about raising their hands and admitting the crimes that they did.
6 out of 9.
That was weird. And this is why. This is the only thing I would expect that on the Democrat side of the aisle, because it's the Republicans that are the law and order party. And what was weird is the enthusiasm. That was the part that got me, was the idea, I did it. I broke the law. You're like, wait a minute, hang on. Aren't you guys the ones that are supposed to be the, no, we shouldn't break the law and these things have consequences, etc. And it seemed like the opposite. And that I found very, very interesting in that conversation, was the idea that there was this enthusiasm for the idea that you'd been arrested.
A lot of those charges that were at least revealed by the candidates, and I'm going to take them at their word until Kyle Clark proves them wrong. But
exactly.
They seem pretty picayune, not irrelevant, and not like the traffic one that Jerry Sonnenberg talked about. I'm like, I'm glad you got stopped, and I'm glad there were consequences for the speeding, but 800 years later, and Jerry, that's not a knock on your age. 800 years later, dudes run. Do I think it's relevant to him or his? No,
not at all.
I think lynches is far more relevant just because it happened while the dude was serving in office and all the other stuff that took place. That to me is far more relevant. But the Ted Harvey one, I was like, that's embarrassingly dumb. I mean, that was just like, what? And then I don't know. Some people are like, oh, those candidates weren't being exactly honest about their record. There's more stuff. I'm like, well, we'll see an ad come out about that. We'll see questions about that.
And that's the best part, is that you now have the opportunity to expose that.
I feel like we are rapidly approaching a time where we're in that post-rule of law period of time here, where I don't know what the other side looks like, but I have never in my lifetime seen such a hyper politicization of the criminal justice system on both sides, where it's quickly becoming irrelevant. My worry is for future juries. My worry is for juries.
Well,
you can knock out all the Soros funded DAs you want. It doesn't matter. When juries stop convicting because they impose some sort of political litmus test on charges or the case, we're over. We're done.
But we're getting there already, because think about the number of people regarding any of the Trump cases, especially the most recent verdict. Again, a verdict that was $83 million delivered by a jury. How many people immediately said, well, that's a biased jury? A jury that Trump's team helped pick. Obviously a biased jury. A jury of Trump's peers because he lived in New York for decades. But that's obviously biased. That somehow that they go and they pick a jury in the locale in which he has lived for decades, and somehow that's not okay anymore. Think about that. That if it was me and I was being brought up for a jury trial in an area where I live in Colorado, in the jurisdiction, well, obviously, since I've been living here so long, this is a biased jury. I mean, where are we going with this?
Yeah, well, when you're forum shopping too, it's just, here's one thing I saw that was posted on social media. Somebody shared it with me, and I thought, okay, this is thought-provoking. And some of these things you'll recognize we've talked about. Trump has never been convicted or even investigated for what E. Jean Carroll accused him of. E. Jean Carroll, doesn't know what year it happened, and has even been caught in a few lies. The inconsistencies are legit. That's true. E. Jean Carroll brought the dress forward, but the dress didn't even exist in the year she claimed it happened. Trump was not on trial for this. He was on trial for calling her a liar and other names. This is the one you're talking about, Billy. The jury is from a far left district, so Trump had no shot at a fair hearing. Once we convince ourselves that, then the criminal justice system goes out the window. If we don't think we can get a fair trial based on politics, I don't know. Says she didn't make these accusations. These next two are the ones that bug me a lot. She didn't make these accusations until 20 years later. She even blah, blah, blah. The only reason she could even sue was because Democrats changed the laws for 1 year in New York. The law was changed the day Trump got out of office. And then the other one is she wasn't going to sue until anti-Trump people talked her into it and offered to pay. Those last three things are bothersome to me. I get late outcry, though. That's not uncommon at all with sex assault victims. We've seen that with our own church, man. We've seen that with the Catholic Church. The outcry stuff doesn't happen when you think it should. Logic cannot be applied to how a victim responds to trauma. But the change in the law thing, that's interesting.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. The other one I will remind people is the Gawker. Isn't Gawker lawsuit? No, what was it? The Hulk Hogan lawsuit that was funded by a billionaire to bring down a gossip website that the billionaire didn't like because they had taken shots at him. So the idea of the funding, again, things happen like that. I don't think that necessarily discounts what E. Jean Carroll said. But the other thing I would add to that is that E. Jean Carroll, within days of it happening, did share the story with two friends. So the idea that she didn't come forward with it, yes. But if she was planting this and she was planning on lying on this, then over 20 years ago, she planted the story with friends and then didn't say or do anything because the friends were on the stand and backed up her story and said, yes, this is what she told me on that day. And she told me it was this. And again, it's decades ago. They can't pinpoint the exact day or month. And again, I am not necessarily okay with that. However, the fact that two of her friends came in and said, within days of this allegedly happening, she told me about it, tells me maybe she's not lying. Because it would seem weird.
Those are all good supportive facts. Don't get me wrong. But if you're looking for a reason to question whether this is just another political thing, then there's a lot to do there. We can talk about that later. I know we've gone super long here. Let's do this. Let's cut away for a break. My God, I hope we've given Billy something that he can do here with the remaining time. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. KNUS 10 KNUS. Let's get smart. It's time for the Thorpe Report.
Good morning, sir. Yes, this is probably sponsored by Layer Fireplace and Patio. They have wonderful deals going on right now to keep the inside of your house warm and wonderful ways to entertain when you get to the springtime. Check it out. They have some great deals right now, some rebates. Layer Fireplace and Patio, proudly sponsoring the Thorpe Report. And they want to be far away from You Choose the News. So the strong high pressure ridge is going to be in our forecast. It's going to be pretty mild temperatures over the week, as George outlined earlier. Police in Boulder say they shot and killed a dog that was attacking a person Sunday morning. Not surprisingly, it's a pit bull. Neighbors who witnessed the attack say the dog belonged to the victim. The dog turned on its owner. A neighbor actually came out and attempted to stab the dog. Still didn't stop it. Eventually, police arrived and they shot the dog and killed it.
Oh my goodness!
I know. And the thing just,
everyone loves pit bulls.
They say just tore the poor man apart. Deputies in Adams County are investigating a shooting that occurred early Sunday morning. They respond to a traffic crash that happened in the 1800 block of Sherwood Drive, 2:20 in the morning on Sunday. Deputies arrived. They found the driver of the vehicle crashed, but had been shot as well. They found out the vehicle was driving on Sherwood, came upon a couple of suspected juveniles standing in the street, according to the sheriff's office. Juveniles, of course, as they want to do, fired a gun into the vehicle, hitting the driver and then crashed. Driver and a passenger inside the vehicle both taken to the hospital for treatment, conditions not known at the time, and they're working to identify the alleged shooters. Police in Denver investigating a double shooting on board an RTD bus. Left a man dead and another wounded. That happened on Saturday evening. Shooting happened 641, bus on Federal Boulevard and Mississippi Avenue. The person shot was transported to the hospital. The victim, other one, the man that was shot was later pronounced dead. Still investigating. 36-year-old Colorado man was killed in a skydiving incident near Longmont. Yeah. The man's primary and reserve chute failed to deploy after he jumped out of the plane and then splat. Woman died after colliding with a tree while she was skiing. The exhibition run at Aspen Highlands on Saturday. Ski Patrol received the call about 11:26 in the morning. 22-year-old woman was pronounced dead around noon. Some families in the Jefferson County community of Indian Hills still without water for more than a week. Yeah, that's it. Back to you, sir.
Where's the good news there? I mean, at least you could have said the Chiefs lost.
That would have been good news, but no.
Oh, my goodness. Well, listen, because of what I've done with the time here, I'm going to cut away real quickly. Billy's going to scramble to move things around, and then we're going to come back and do the good stuff. That's the You Choose the News. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Let's get stupid. It's time for the Thor. I'm sorry. It's time for You Choose the News.
I'm going to take that personally, sir.
No. It's if the Thorpe reports, Let's get smart. This is the flip side of it.
Yes. And stupid is my brand, as we know. Alrighty, sir. Yes, it is time to play everybody's favorite fake or radio news game show, You Choose the News, where we have scoured the interwebs this entire weekend for really dumb stories about us humans and give them stupid headlines to play this fake or radio news game because so far they haven't told us to stop. They've hinted, but notice anything out loud. Alrighty, sir. Here we go. Headline number 1, the homeless look is now fashion chic. Headline number 2, it's all about the Benjamins. Headline number 3, the secret to long and healthy life has now been located. And headline number 4, I'm sure that'll teach them. Your choice this morning, sir.
That'll teach him.
That'll teach him.
Talking
yes.
into a dead mic.
That'll teach him. A West Virginia woman has been arrested. The 19-year-old Hannah Jones recently got into an argument late at night with her boyfriend. Alcohol was involved, and they had a disagreement. So during the argument, she promptly decided the way to solve this is to kill one of our pets. Yes. She walked on over, grabbed the couple's gecko, shoved it into the garbage disposal, and turned it on. She has now been arrested for animal cruelty. So she decided during the argument to kill the pet gecko. which is awful, horrible. Plus, now she can't save 15% or more in her car insurance. So that's gonna. It's a horrible thing.
Choked
horrible
out the
thing.
gecko.
Yes, horrible thing.
What?
All right. Next choice. Thank you for laughing.
Yeah.
Homeless look now in fashion. Man now fashion chic. It's all about the Benjamins or the secret to long and healthy life.
I'd like to know the secret.
The secret to a long and healthy life is wonderful, but you might need to have some wanderlust. They've located it, but it's in Japan.
Huh?
There is Japan's oldest village is looking for help. They're looking for new residents. This is not as far as age of the village. It's based on the age of the residents. 2/3 of the residents are over the age of 65, and they're looking for new youngins to move in and to help with the population. At one time, the village was 11,000 people. Now it's just under 1,500. But why would you want to move there?
Yeah.
Well, during a recent test, the residents over the age of 65 in the village performed the best on cognitive, on physical, on every single test you can to gauge your health. They crushed it. They came in 20 years younger than almost anybody else. Yes.
A lot of Sudoku? Or
I
what
don't
are
know,
they doing?
but it's a mountain village, and whatever they're doing, these people are in phenomenal shape, and they say they're going to live probably to be the oldest people on the planet. So if that's your gig,
Is it on
There you
Honshu?
go.
I mean, I think I'd go there.
I didn't check.
If you
I'll check.
vacation there, do you get a couple
I'll show
months
you.
out of your life extra?
Maybe it could, but hey, all right. Now, final choice. The homeless look is now fashion chic, or it's all about the Benjamins.
Well, I want to say something for Friday. I do think the homeless look is chic.
Yes, the homeless look is now fashion chic. At least that's according to the science hippies. The people that walk around talking with big words and wearing the white coats say all over the world, hermit crabs are now looking for that homeless look. They're saying that there has been a change in homeless crab populations. 13 out of 16 species studied are now using our garbage as their homes. So rather than picking up the snail shells, hermit crabs are now grabbing our discarded plastic and other garbage and using them as our homes. In fact, there is one species of hermit crabs in which the plastic has become the de rigueur. It's what you have to have because it's lighter and more durable than the snail shells they normally have. And that particular population of snail shells, these are home, has been decreasing. So fewer snail shells available. So now the plastic junk that we throw in the ocean is becoming very valuable to some of these hermit crab populations. So they're actually fights over the trash. So, so basically now they're, hermit crabs walking around with like Coca-Cola bottle caps on their rear ends and tops of lights and stuff.
But they like it. But they like
it. Yes, they do. They look kind of like, I'd say, steampunk crabs. That's kind of the idea is do that. So I just think it's a new fashion choice. It's kind of the idea. But the science hippies are all upset about it.
Normally, scientists, just like anyone else, don't want to have crabs.
That's
because,
true.
Even if you put a bottle cap on it, it doesn't really cure. I mean, believe me, there's just no way to.
And that is it. That is the end. I wish we had enough time. I can't reach the sponsor because then I could have gone to McDonald's today. But no, yet again, we will not get paid for this frivolity.
Oh, come on.
That's probably some sort of, balance in the universe for this. But yes, sir, that is it. That is the end of the silliness. It is now back to you. Music will start here in 2 seconds.
It's hard to imagine. Listen, how long has it been since we have consistently hit the damn sponsor thing? We got to figure out what we're doing here. I mean, at some point, maybe this week we'll get it licked. Hey, here's what's coming up. Rose Pugliese, friend of the show, friend of mine. She's going to be on. She's the new minority leader. She's the new person that fills the role for Mike Lynch after he stepped down last week. Let's talk about what's going to happen under her leadership when we come back. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, hour 2 of 4 on the George Show, 710 KNUS. At 10 o'clock, we shifted over to the national programming that we have here. Charlie Kirk, Dennis Prager, Seb Gorka, Brandon Tatum. And honestly, after that, I don't know because I'm thinking about going to bed. And then Billy and I will be back here tomorrow and every day this week from 6 to 10 a.m. Joining us right now on the VIP line, friend of mine, friend of the show, and someone who has a brand new title. It's Rose Pugliese. Representative Pugliese, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, George. Good morning.
Good morning. Tell us about your new title.
So I was elected by my caucus, majority of my caucus, to be the minority leader. So kind of dropping the assistant and just being the minority leader now.
Now, probably not the way you had anticipated or hoped becoming the minority leader, but here it is.
I agree. Mike Lynch is a good man, and I am ready to take over and kind of help push our caucus forward and our priorities forward for this legislative session.
I'm going to presume that in the one vote that was taken last week that you had voted not to no confidence. I don't know what the word is, but you had voted against the vote of no confidence on Mike.
You know, we just need to move forward at this point. I don't want to rehash everything that happened last week. I think the caucus has new leadership, and we're going to continue to go into this session talking about the issues that are important to people, like affordability and being able to actually live in Colorado.
What's this reset look like in terms of priorities? Is this the same set of goals and bills and stuff that you guys had under Mike, or do you have a different priority, a different shift, or is it the exact same thing?
No, I think the priorities for our caucus remain the same. We are dedicated to talking about affordability, affordable and attainable housing, and what that really looks like, making sure that all areas of the state are actually being represented and their perspectives. Obviously, education is really important, parental rights and parental choice, and then public safety, which we've got such great members of our caucus who are dedicated to making sure that our communities really have the tools they need to be safe.
Can we talk about each of those things? What is it that 19 of 65, and again, you guys are constantly fighting an uphill battle, but what is it that you're hopeful of being able to advance by way of bringing costs down and stuff like that? And in your announcement, you announced the price of groceries, property taxes to rise, with really no response at all from the Democrat-controlled legislature and all that other stuff. What is it you're hopeful of?
I will say, you know, since the failure of Proposition HH, which thanks to you and all of your listeners who really engaged on the grassroots level to make that happen, I think the conversations have shifted. We'll see whether it translates into actual legislation that helps the people of Colorado, but the conversations are happening. So bipartisan conversations around what the long-term and sustainable solution on property taxes, what is affordable, and I don't like to say affordable without saying attainable, because affordable housing in one area is very different. Douglas County is very different than Prowers County. And so making sure we recognize that those differences exist and pushing forward policies that actually help. But this recognition by the state that needs to happen, that we will continue to beat the drum on, which is the regulations that have been put in place by the state, is really what's affecting the affordability and attainability of housing. And so trying to roll back some of those regulations, at least having those conversations, is really important, and they are starting to happen.
How do we do that? Like with the rolling back the regulations, you said, hey, we've started these conversations. Does it require legislative action to roll those back, or is it something that the executive branch, much like we see with the federal government, is there a way that the executive branch can somehow move to unroll some of those rules, or is it all statutory changes?
No, these would be statutory changes. So there will be different pieces of legislation by both Republicans in the House and the Senate that are moving forward that we're trying to get bipartisan support around to really start addressing some of these issues.
Is there specific legislation that you guys have offered so far that you think helps to accomplish that?
Well, for one, Representative Bottoms, Senator Kirkmeyer, and I have a bill to reduce the income tax rate to 4%. That is something the governor himself talked about in the debate on Proposition HH. And all he needs to do is get 20 Democrats to come on board, and we can make that happen for the people of Colorado. So I am hopeful that he will be the leader of his party and make that happen.
You expect that?
I know that there are definitely some stronger conversations happening than I would have anticipated.
Some of the other stuff you had referenced too was public safety. What are the Republican efforts in the House to try to address public safety?
I know that there are definitely some bills coming forward. I believe there's a truth in sentencing bill coming forward. Public safety isn't my strongest area. We've got such great leadership, Representative Lynch, Representative Evans, Representative Armagost, and so they can delve into those issues a little bit better than I can. But we've got such great members of our caucus who are having conversations across party lines to see if we can really make Colorado a safer place, which is what the governor said he wants to accomplish. So let's help him accomplish that goal.
What specific bills do you have that you're running?
So the income tax rate reduction is a big one for me. I have pulled a title on, it just says property taxes right now, because there's a few different solutions on the table that Senator Pelton and Senator Kirkmeyer and I are talking with the other side about. Really want to try, there really does seem, at least on the property tax conversation, to be a willingness to move forward some bipartisan legislation. So we are having some great constructive talks around that. The property tax task force is still meeting as well. And then I do a lot in the child welfare space, trying to keep our children and families safe. I have a kinship bill that will help families who take in children, to make sure that they are getting some resources that they didn't have access to before. So really just making sure our families are stronger, our kids are safer. So that's the type of legislation that I generally push forward.
In terms, and we're talking with Rose Pugliese, newly minted Colorado House Minority Leader. By the way, does that get you access to a better bathroom or parking space or something? More pay, something?
No parking space or bathroom. I think there's a little bit of extra per diem, but George, as well as I do, we don't run for office for the money.
You can't survive on the legislator pay, Rose. I don't know how you do it to begin with. But there really ought to be a special leadership bathroom that just you and the speaker have. You know what I mean? Some kind of, and maybe each a red stall, blue stall kind of a thing. I don't know. It's just a thought. Nonetheless,
sure.
When you look at the legislature so far, this General Assembly, this session, how many days do we have left? Are we under 100 already?
I haven't been counting, although I probably should, but I think we're probably just under 100.
What have you seen from your colleagues across the way? And here's where I get a little bit concerned about asking you that. Now that you're in this role, not that you weren't even as the assistant, but now that you're in this role, do you feel at all some reluctance to want to take on the Dems on the other side out of fear that, well, then it's going to screw us up on our ability to work some sort of bipartisan thing?
No, I mean, obviously pushing forward our caucus priorities is the priority for me. And so in whatever way the caucus feels like we need to move forward, we will make those decisions together. That's the way we will move forward. So obviously bipartisan legislation is important to me because I really do think it is the best legislation to help the people of Colorado, and we'll continue to move in that direction. What
have you seen so far out of the folks on the other side?
I mean, obviously, this new position is very new. And so right now, I think that there's a lot of openings for conversation and a willingness to work together. But it's still early in session. And I think we've got some very big, very controversial bills coming.
Can you give us some sort of idea of what you've heard, what you're putting us on notice about?
Obviously, there's been a lot of conversations around additional gun legislation, expansion of red flag, some of those bills that'll be coming forward that will be very controversial for our caucus. I do hear that there is a bill to eliminate charter schools, which is a huge issue.
Wait, what?
Yes. So I have not seen it, but that is the rumor on the street. And I have the largest charter schools in my district in El Paso County. And I think it's really important that we protect parental rights and school choice, because we all know that our kids learn differently. What's good for my daughter is not good for my son. And so giving that power to parents is incredibly important. So that'll definitely be one to watch for.
The gun ones that you've heard about, what have you heard so far? I mean, I've seen some things on social media, but I'm not in it like you are.
So what I've heard, again, not seen, is an expansion of red flag.
Whoa.
To, I guess,
Who can it be expanded to now, Rose? Like people in adjoining states, people that have interacted with you on social media? I mean, how can they expand it more than giving it to Phil and teachers? I mean,
I guess everybody and anybody would be able to report. So that's what I've heard. There's also legislation I've heard about around safe spaces, which basically means you can't have a firearm outside of your home.
what?
I think that would be, what normally in an election year you would see Democrats moderate. What we've heard is they're not moderating and they're just moving forward with an extreme agenda. So we'll see how far that goes, but that is what we're hearing right now.
Rose, when do you guys get to know about these things? I mean, in this effort that they claim to want to have this bipartisan stuff as well, when do you get to see a draft of the bill so you can begin to formulate whatever your position is going to be?
At this point, since those bills are not bipartisan and there has not seemed to be an effort to make them bipartisan, I don't know that they could get Republican support, and I think they know that. As these bills are being introduced and assigned to committees, that's when we will see and know more and really be able to activate our grassroots network to make sure that they're participating and getting their voices heard.
So no chance at all that they could legitimately say, hey, we've spoken with all the stakeholders here and we've tried to come to some consensus. This is just, we dominate the Gold Dome and suck it.
I think on some of this legislation, definitely the more extreme that Republicans will not support, I do believe they're just going to try to push those pieces of legislation forward.
Crazy stuff. What else in terms of this session? What we've seen in the past, you're right about the moderating thing, which I don't think they're going to do this year because there's nothing on the ballot for them to worry about, right? Like no statewide races to drag anyone down and all that. But what we tend to see is with about 15 seconds left on the clock, all of a sudden, a ton of the most controversial bills drop on us. Do you expect that again this session?
What's interesting, and it's still yet to be seen. It's very early in session, so don't hold me to this. But it seems like maybe they're going to be bringing some of the more controversial bills earlier. What I don't know if that means there are just more of them, and so it's going to take up the whole clock, or if they really want to give more time for some of these conversations. Still yet to be seen.
Are there tools that you guys have to either thwart or slow down the process? I can't imagine they're secret or anything, but back there was a time when it was like, please read the bills out loud. And even that, they were like, we're going to put it on super speed with the computers, and the court had to get involved. Do we have any other tools to at least give us time to mount an opposition? Or is it like, no, we're just kind of here getting run over?
Well, we showed last session, and I think we will continue this, especially as our caucus has really come together. An ability to be able to slow down legislation. We run amendments, thoughtful amendments that would make bills better to the extent that some of these can be made better. And so there are definitely negotiations on that. Obviously, we have a filibuster team, which will, try to run down the clock as much as possible. I think that all of these strategies are on the table, and, depending on what comes forward and where our caucus is, we will together determine a strategy that works best to protect the people of Colorado.
There was a successful lawsuit forcing the Dem leadership into transparency in some of the votes and the wrangling that they were engaged in. I think Chris Hansen had sort of set up some sort of, I don't know if it was WhatsApp or Signal, but some sort of secret squirrel kind of communication system that Epps and Marshall came down on them on. Does any of that court ruling change the way that Republicans do business in the House?
No, because we don't actually tell our members how to vote, nor do we employ some of those methods. we are fiercely independent, which I
So
love. And so, no, we have never engaged in anything like that.
I would love
normally.
to see, by the way, the response from Republicans in the caucus who are told, I mean, whether it's by you or anybody else, this is how you must vote. I mean, we are the party of iron sharpens iron, and sometimes to our own detriment. You know what I mean? Like, there's no chance you're going to tell people how to vote in secret or in public. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. Last questions for you before we let you get back to doing the good work on behalf of the state. The three most controversial members that I can see in the legislature are all Dems, by the way, but they include Elizabeth Epps, Hamas celebrant Timmy Hernandez, and crazy Bob Marshall out of my county, Douglas County. Anything that you perceive going on with them already? Have they attempted to sort of tone it down in the interest of, hey, let's get things done? Or do they remain, and maybe it's just my perception, Rose, maybe you don't feel this, do they remain ongoing distractions from the work of the legislature?
It's still early. So again, don't hold me to any of this. And Representative Epps has been remote since session started. So
why is that?
It's still early. I'm not privy to that information, but she has been remote. She has not been in person on the floor of the House. And so thus far, we haven't talked about legislation, but it's coming. Today will be the first day of really having legislation on the floor. And so
this is the first day?
I mean, we had like a couple of bills, but nothing super controversial. I think there's definitely some interesting bills coming forward today as we start, kind of in the legislative process. And so I think there's always opportunities to see what the Democrats bring forward. But thus far, as of, this morning, we haven't seen very much of that yet.
Oh, I forgot to ask you this one note I
Sure.
overlooked, and that was, the border crisis is not only real, but thanks to Greg Abbott down there in Texas shipping up some of what the federal government is letting happen into Denver, we're getting this renewed interest in actually trying to figure out what to do with 36,000 new migrants in Denver and elsewhere. Do you sense any legislation a-brewing from the other side, or is there anything the Republicans can do to try to address this? And I'll tell you my concern. My concern is that Mike Johnson has already signaled Denver's overwhelmed. We can't house these people. We can't do this. We need our neighbors to take care of this. And given the legislature, the Democrat legislature's interest in wanting to take away more and more local control, and you are more acutely aware of that than probably anyone other than Kirkmeyer and Pelton because of your role as a commissioner, anything out there that we ought to be keeping our ears open for by way of the Dems trying to tell the rest of the state, hey, you guys are just going to have to absorb these people and provide for them?
We haven't heard anything. Obviously, as a caucus, that is a discussion that we need to have. But it's interesting. Before session started, I was on a Zoom, and I can't remember which Zoom it was, but a question around that came to the Democrats. And, they basically said, at least my impression of what they said was there was not going to be legislation moving forward this session around that issue. But it's still yet to be seen. So still very early in session.
Very, very interesting. Minority Leader, Rose Pugliese, thanks for taking time out of your morning to do this. Does this mean you have to leave the house earlier now?
No, I still leave at 6 o'clock. I just do a lot more work on the way up.
Well, thank you for what you're doing. Please keep us informed of the nuttiness that goes on so we can share it with listeners and maybe call them to do some action.
Absolutely. Thank you, George, for
Take
all
care.
you do.
Bye now.
Okay.
Hey, that's Rose Pugliese. She's the new minority leader. Interesting stuff. I still feel like we're a bit on the front edge of a fog bank. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is John Carpenter's The Fog, where something bad is out there, but you can't see it, which means you can't really prepare for it. It's yet to be seen, but I love the revelation that Elizabeth Epps has been only appearing in the legislature remotely. Is that cool? Can you do that? And why? Why shouldn't taxpayers get to know why that is? Can you cast votes remotely in the legislature in the non-pandemic era? Does that make sense? And frankly, we ought to be doing that in Congress if we're going to do that, so we can keep those people out of the damn swamp, keep them back here at home, and they can have all of their meetings and discussions and super secret stuff all remotely. We can set, I don't care if we give them something to keep them here, but that part was fascinating to me. It's just interesting to hear that Rose says they're looking at expanding red flag. My God, what's left? What's left other than mandating red flag for all Republicans? I mean, other than that, automatic, like it's de facto. You have to prove if you're a Republican that you should be able to have firearms. I don't know. What did you hear there? I want to talk about the state of Colorado and what your expectations are for this legislative session. 303-696-1971. 303-696-1971. It's George Brauchler on The George Show. You're listening to 710 KNUS. Funky cold media is what it says up here on the thing. Do you see this, Billy? George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KUS. My thanks to Minority Leader for the state House Republicans, Rose Pugliese, for taking time out of her business morning to have a conversation with us. It just sounds like it's just so early. We can't really know everything that's going on. But I want to remind you that even with just the first few weeks of this session, there is some gong show stuff that's already taking place. And you know, my hope is to be able to have conversations with some of the people that take a different position than I do. For instance, I had revealed, I think last week in our conversation, I had talked about the fact that there is a House bill that is being offered that would create a special pathway to get your name changed if you're a convicted felon, but only a special pathway that exists if you change your gender identity. And I'll tell you that over the weekend, I was contacted by one of the people spearheading that effort. She was a defense attorney. No need to reveal the identity. I did invite her on the show and said, I'd love to have the respectful conversation with you. And that's, by the way, something I think that the show has taken pride in, is that we get people from the other side of issues and the other side of the political parties to come on the air. And it's interesting, the response that we get. Some folks, they text in and they're like, I really appreciate the respectful way in which you engage these folks. And even when you disagree and all that, and I like to hear that because that's my goal. But there are other folks who are like, why didn't you burn that mother to the ground? Why didn't you ask all of these questions and set fire to them and scorch them and blah, blah, blah? And the short answer is, one, that's not good radio for me. That's some other radio show. I don't enjoy just hearing somebody try to tear someone apart. I enjoy the hard questions. But I'll give you an example. If you listened at all to that 10 billion mules guy, Dinesh D'Souza, that came on the radio, he had a very uncomfortable experience during the interview because there were questions that he just couldn't answer. My guess is it was so uncomfortable, dude ain't never coming back on. I'd love to interview that guy to talk to him about his latest documentary, Police State. He makes great movies. They're researched. I was going to say well-researched, but based on the 8 trillion mules one, it wasn't. I mean, some of the conclusions he made, and just to remind you, if you don't have the recollection of that interview from over a year ago, guy came on the air and said, well, you've got a whole bunch of people ballot harvesting. They grabbed up a bunch of ballots in excess of what the law permits, and that invalidates all of those ballots in every state in America. And I stopped him and I said, hang on, one of many disagreements we had. And I said, hang on. That's not true in Colorado. A voter isn't disenfranchised because the person they turn the ballot over to happens to grab up 10 more than they're entitled to. That doesn't make their vote not count. And then he's like, well, I don't know what the law is in Colorado. And I said, well, have you found that to be the law in any state in the union? And he didn't know the answer. And it was like, well, dude, you just can't come on the radio and make announcements and proclamations about what the law is having not researched it. So that was uncomfortable. And then I asked him, did you ever one time come across a ballot that was counted that was fraudulently voted, like not voted in the will of the person who cast the ballot? And he said no. And so I do those things, but my guess is the result is Dinesh doesn't come back on. Why would you go there? Why would you go to a place where, you had an uncomfortable experience? So for all these other interviews, whether it's on the left or the right, whether it's Mayor Mike Johnston or David Williams or anybody else in between, my goal is to get out good information, but to do it in a respectful enough way that these people will keep coming back. And to that end, Billy, do we have Johnson coming on at all this week? Do we have any confirmation yet? Billy's going to check right now. So to that end, there's this bill that would seek to allow folks, and I'm going to read you the quote here from House Bill 1071. Not this week? Come on. We got to figure out a way to get that dude on. Allows a judge, in fact, tells a judge it is good cause for a felon to change their name to conform with that convicted felon's gender identity. So I had this attorney reach out to me and gave me it was a respectful, but certainly an unhappy email. And a couple things stuck out to me. One is her perspective was informed by her clientele, and she'd been a defense attorney and she was representing a bunch of people that were, I think she had said, Club Q survivors, some of whom were convicted felons who something related to the Club Q experience being victims, and I couldn't figure out what it was yet, and that's what I wanted to talk to her about. Something about that means, well, they should have been able to change their names because they're victims of Club Q, and by the way, they're convicted felons and they're transgender. And I'm like, I don't understand what that means. The other piece of this, though, was that she had said that, and I don't know if it's the fault of my column in the Gazette, but since the column in the Gazette, you know, she and others associated with this group that's spearheading this have received death threats and a bunch of ugly texts and emails and calls and whatnot. And so she expressed that she is concerned for her family, and she was going to bring them to the Capitol, but now she's concerned. And my answer to that was, I think that's wrong. I think where it's criminal, it ought to be prosecuted. You got to reveal to law enforcement. There's no room in civil society for anything like that at all. If you say something someone disagrees with, people tell you that and they hold you accountable for it. But you don't threaten someone, especially anonymously. I mean, that's what Twitter exists for, right? That's what X exists for. So you can be anonymous and say a bunch of hurtful, hateful things you'd never say in front of your boss or anyone else in your life because they would despise you. But so I'd said that, and I said, look, just come on the radio. Let's have a conversation about this, because this House bill thing is, it's unnecessary, in my opinion, without changing the entire process for all convicted felons. I just don't think you create a special exception for people for gender identity reasons. That doesn't make sense to me. But that's what's going on in the first few weeks of the legislature. And I think it's called Tiara's bill because one of the transgender victims of Club Q was named Tiara, and this had something, I just don't know the backstory, but I hope she'll come on and we'll have the conversation. I also told you about House Bill 6, which was the Democrat-sponsored legislation that would take someone who was legally incompetent to be held accountable for their conduct because they can't understand what's going on in court or assist their attorneys, but they are competent enough to engage in a promise and a contract with the DA's office for purposes of a diversion program that's predicated on taking responsibility for your conduct. So that's out there already. Now, I've started to hear, like, from people like Rose, some of these other bills. Well, there's another one that dropped, and I want to do a deep dive on this. I just haven't been able to tear through it, but it's House Bill 241101, and it's offered up by two House members, Mabry and Snyder. Mabry's a claimed attorney who's like one of these housing rights attorneys, which means if you're a renter and you just stop wanting to pay rent, this guy will fight to the death to keep you in that person's property without them getting the benefit of your contract with them, called a lease. That's what this guy does for a living. Now, I'm sure he does it for people too that are being wrongfully evicted, but I'll tell you, in his heart of hearts, this guy believes that all evictions are wrongful and sees all property owners as deep-pocketed rich people who are out there to exploit the working class by, I guess, suckering them into signing up for leases and then expecting them to actually honor those leases independent of things that happen in the economy, which is what you and I would know as reality in the American economy, and they think is just absolutely upside down. So here's this bill. It's called, and it's such a fraud in terms of the title, Concerning Empowering Victims by Enhancing Access to Restorative Justice in Criminal Cases. You read that and you're like, oh my gosh, you're empowering victims. It's kind of fake, man. It looks like this bill is a bit of a Trojan horse, and I want to do a deep dive on the language. It's a long bill. I mean, it's 24 pages. And again, if you can't get what you need to get accomplished in less than 24 pages of a bill, maybe it's a little much for one title, but it could be okay. But here's what it says. In essence, this bill applies to any crime, misdemeanor or felony within Title 18. And it provides for an opportunity for restorative justice, which is this sit down with the offender and try to talk through, this is how it impacted me. And they get a chance to mouth, I'm so sorry, and all this other stuff. Now, there are cases where this thing has been successful. There are cases where it's appropriate. This bill would allow restorative justice in rape cases and domestic violence cases. In fact, any crime it would mandate the opportunity for restorative justice here. Wow. Incredibly dangerous. There's a provision in this thing for an accountability letter bank for convicted offenders where the prison will send it to victims and survivors. What? You're going to allow convicted felons to send letters to victims? Now, keep in mind, this isn't a thing where the victims say, I want to be part of this. I'd love to hear from the person that raped me or murdered my son or other garbage like that. This isn't a place where you get to ask for it. No, you're presumed to be in it, and it looks like it's some sort of an opt-out provision. You know, much like when you are tricked into paying for park passes for everybody that uses them, even though you don't, because when you go to register your vehicle, it's built into the registration fee unless you opt out. It's in the fine print that they don't tell you about. You know what I'm talking about. This thing is crazy. There's no provision in here to make clear when a victim or survivor gets to opt out. Instead, it should be, look at this. Listen to this. This is just some of the language. It permits a victim to say, hey, man, I want to opt out of this at sentencing. But then that's not forever. It's not forever that they've opted out of this, because the offender can keep coming back and saying, how about now? How about now? How about now? How about now? Can you imagine the traumatization of victims having to go through that? This is not about empowering victims. This is about empowering offenders. This is about trying to figure out a way to convince people to let prisoners out of prison earlier for the worst of the worst crimes. There are no exceptions to this. Rape a child, restorative justice. Rape an adult, restorative justice. Murder someone's son or daughter, restorative justice. I'm sorry. If that had any value at all, it would 100% every single time, no exceptions, have to be driven by the victim. I don't give a crap if the convicted murderer, rapist, or whatever is interested in restorative justice. I don't care. Stay in prison. If the victim wants to pursue it, great. And even then, I'm not sure that that's good for them or the system, but let's at least begin with the truth that offenders should not be allowed to call their shot when it comes to trying to make amends with the people they victimized. You can start by saving your soul, asking for forgiveness from the great creator or whoever it is that you pray to or don't pray to. But this is just garbage. And to have an attorney who has no concept of what the criminal justice system is, an attorney whose sense of justice seems to be it's unfair for landlords and property owners to expect people to live up to their word because sometimes they run into situations where they can't pay. That shouldn't be the end of them getting the benefit of the bargain. It should be the landowner that loses out on the benefit of the bargain. That's this guy. That's this guy. I don't know. I don't know the other person, Snyder, presumably not a Republican. I'm certainly interested in that. This looks like language, by the way, of bills that were previously offered by now out of office. I think he's out of office. Senator Pete Lee, I think he was termed out. He may be out at the end of this session, but that's what this feels like to me, is that this is another attempt to try to force the criminal justice system to take another offender-friendly and an offender-focused look at itself. And aren't we tired of that, folks? Aren't you tired of bills that say, but what about the offender? What about the offender? Can't we figure out a way to get them out? Can't we give them $3,000? Can't we let them send an unending number of letters to the people they victimized to try to get them to forgive them so that they can get out of prison and get that $3,000 earlier? Folks, this is on a verge of becoming an irrelevant criminal justice system. I should tell you, the goal of some of these folks on the left is to move away from any punishment at all, ever, never, ever, for almost all offenses, and instead move to a civil system of criminal justice, where you could just take the word justice and criminal out of it, just a civil system where people can be maybe fined, although if you don't make $1 million a year, you don't ever have to pay back the fine. And that we put you in rehabilitation-only type environments. And gosh darn it, if you just keep reoffending, well, by golly, you're going to get more rehabilitation. And if you reoffend, we're going to do it again. You're going to have to go through rehabilitation for a long period of time before we put you in more rehabilitation. That's the goal of the left, this harm reduction garbage, where it makes sense to we're just keeping addicts alive until they either overdose and we can't stop it, or until they finally decide, you know what, today's the day I stopped doing the fentanyl. Today's that day. I think I'm ready for a change. These people on the left don't understand human nature. They claim the moral high ground. They claim to be the ones that are interested in humanity. They don't understand human nature. And that's the great failing of that ideology. They look at the criminal justice system as broken because it dares to punish people who have done wrong. And in their minds, they're not the ones at fault for what they did wrong. So why are we punishing them? I mean, I'm going to go through this, Bill. I feel like I'm on this ridiculous rant. Now, listen, I got to take a break here. One, because it's probably time to take that heart medication I have yet to be offered. But give me a break. Here's a guy that gets it, by the way. Here's a guy that understands what justice is. His name is Dan Kaplan. He and Babar Wahid, his partner, and the other attorneys that they have at Dan Kaplan Law, these guys understand justice. And here's the bottom line for justice. When someone wrongs you, there's a price to be paid. Yes, is an apology part of the process? You betcha. Is an apology enough? Never. When it comes to things like changing your life, when it comes to things like victimizing you. And that victimization can take the form of criminal, that's for sure. That's what DAs are for. But it can also take the form of civil things. Somebody hurts you through their negligent or reckless conduct, even if there's a criminal case attached to it. Criminal justice system can't give back what was taken. It can't pay you for all the things that you lost. Restitution, victims' compensation, those are teeny tiny drops in the bucket for someone who's lost a loved one to a drunk driver or someone who has been the victim of some other malfeasance or misfeasance. Well, Dan Kaplan knows how to get the rest of that justice the criminal justice system can't provide you, and that's in the civil system. He's been doing it. He and Babar have been doing it forever. If you're looking for someone that will fight for you until you tell them to stop, until you tell them you've gotten enough justice, it's Dan Kaplan, 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551. You can check him out at dankaplanslaw.com. That's Dan Kaplan, as always, C-A-P-L-I-S, dankaplanslaw.com. Interested to know what the hell you think is going on with this criminal justice system in this legislature here. And do you support this? We'll have when I get through all of the 24 pages, we'll have more of a deep dive conversation on this because there's studies and research out there about how bad this is. But what do you think about this? Restorative justice? What role should this play in our criminal justice system? And should it apply to violent crimes like this? 303-696-1971. Going to cut away for a break. When we come back at the 8 o'clock hour, of course, the top of the hour, we're going to be joined by Patty Calhoun. She is the editor and inventor, I don't know if that's the right word, of Westword. That thing has been around since, well, the Gutenberg printing press. And in no way is that a comment on Patty's age. She is timeless. We'll get to her in the 8 o'clock hour. Give us a call now, 303-696-1971. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Normally I wait for that, but it takes like 10 minutes to get there from here, and we just don't have it. In fact, we may only have enough time before Patty Calhoun joins us in the 8 o'clock hour to ask Billy to share with us a special event coming up here that Billy, I told Billy I was going to ask him about. Sorry, man.
Yeah.
I told you I didn't tell you when.
No,
but
it's good. Yeah, I got to wish a happy birthday to my mom. She's I'm not going to talk about age, but it is her birthday today. So we're doing some very special stuff. Love you, Mom. Thank you so much. Hope that I'm embarrassing you and that friends of yours hear this and say your son embarrassed you on the air. Just tell her I said something silly about her. But yeah, it's a reminder to me about all of the dumb stuff that I did as a kid. And I really appreciate the fact that she did not leave me in the woods for the wolves, because she sure had some opportunities, and there were moments in which I deserved it.
You sound like you guys were Spartans.
No, but one of them was, I still remember the lovely retired teacher from across the street that comes over, and I'm probably maybe first grade or so, and she knocks on the front door and asks my mom, "Is your son supposed to be climbing around on the roof of the house and jumping off with a towel around his neck?" She didn't know.
Superman.
She didn't know, but those were the choices I was making. So appreciate you, Mom. Thanks for keeping me alive.
Well, buddy, I know you don't want to talk about age, but how old is she?
I'm smarter than that.
Listen, happy birthday to Billy's mom. When we come back, it'll be Patty Calhoun getting us up to speed on all the good stuff going on in Denver. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Welcome back to the George Show. We're halfway through the Monday show. There's no more full week of January left because I think Thursday we turn into February already. I can't believe I'm saying that out loud. This first month is just blown by. One of the lucky things I get to do from time to time, not just on the radio, but when I do Colorado Inside and Out, it's get to spend some time chit-chatting with Mrs. Denver. I don't know if that's the right term, not in a beauty pageant kind of a way, but in that much more I know this city like nobody's business kind of way. Her name is Patty Calhoun, and she joins us right now. Patty, thanks for joining us.
Oh, no problem. Good morning, George.
Is that the title? Is it Miss Denver, Mrs. Denver? Is there anything like that? Something?
Or missed, M-I-S-S-E-D. I'm not entirely sure. But
listen, we did a little bit of TV last week, and candidly, I have not yet had the opportunity to watch to see how much I got edited out, because it feels like most of my answers, they look at it later on and go, that's nonsense and factually inaccurate. We can't put that on. So I hope it went well.
I'll be honest, I haven't seen it yet either, because I went to Liz Cheney on Friday night.
Was she doing a stand-up, or what was she doing?
No, she is now on a speaker circuit. She just come up from Phoenix, I think, and she packed the Belco Theater, which
really
holds like 5,000. Yeah.
And was it what you might expect from her in terms of, hey, listen, I'm a Republican and I'm a conservative. The party has left me, and here's the dangers that Donald Trump presents, that kind of a thing? Or was it something else? Like, if you told me if it was poetry, I'd be like, wow.
She was very straightforward. It was pretty much what you'd expect. I think, of course, the big shock when you think about Liz Cheney is that this was a room full of people applauding her who 5 years ago probably would not have even gone to a Liz Cheney speech, much less applauded her. But she was certainly talking about if she will do anything to defeat Trump. She didn't necessarily say she would vote for Biden. She didn't say she would run, but it was a very interesting evening.
You know, there was a time when I was at a fundraiser at which there were these three people: Liz Cheney, Ken Buck, Lauren Boebert. the same fundraiser.
Wow.
Yeah, you just can't imagine getting them all together again. It was years ago, but can't imagine putting them all in the same room together. One of the other things that's happening at the local level is we had some forum that we did. In fact, right after you and I were together doing our filming of the show and all that stuff, there were two things that we couldn't really get into because they hadn't really transpired yet. One was this thing that Jesse Paul and I did with Kelly Maher and Ernest Lunning, and that was the big forum out in Fort Lupton on behalf of the women of Weld and the Lincoln Club of Colorado. But the other one was this court case on this lawsuit thing. And I think part of the thought was, man, is this thing going to drop? Is it going to drop? It still hasn't dropped.
Which court case?
The one that was going to decide.
Oh, the decision on 108.
The decision on 108, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I did watch a lot of, thank God to the women of Lupton for live streaming that.
Women of Weld, yeah.
I did watch a lot of the debate, which was fascinating. I mean, obviously, it's one thing for everyone to admit they've been arrested, or I should say, 6 out of 9 admitting they've been arrested. But the high fives from the law and order party seemed a little excessive.
Well, yeah. So I was there. Ernest asked the question, and then I got to ask the follow-up, which I thought was telling too. What were your takeaways from at least those exchanges?
The biggest takeaway of the whole night, and it came at the end, was the fact that even though Lauren Boebert was obviously in everybody's sight, she was the one everyone asked questions for when they went after her as a carpetbagger. I thought the lineup was pretty congenial. I thought Lynch acquitted himself pretty well, considering what a bad week he'd had. But that Boebert only came out 5th in a straw poll. Now, admittedly, there were a lot of friends and supporters of the other candidates in the room, but still, I think she, unless the numbers break her way just because of the sheer volume of candidates, they don't really seem to love her in the fourth.
At least not with that engaged, arguably informed crowd that was there. I thought that there was a moment that preceded the question about carpetbagging that was interesting. At one point, Lauren was giving an answer, and she said something about the crime stuff. Because I'd asked the question, how should voters weigh this, right? Like, how should voters consider your arrest and this other stuff. And Lauren was answering it, and she said, with reference to Lynch, and I hope you get your gun rights restored. I could see on his face his reaction, and he took offense to that. I don't know if she intended offense, but he took offense. And that then, when it was his turn to ask a question of the candidates, he ends up saying, you know what, you asked about my gun rights. I'm going to ask you, what's the definition of carpetbagger? And I thought, whoa, that was the most direct punch. I mean, Deb Flora did a nice job summoning that quote from when not Kerry Kennedy, good Lord. Who was it that she was referencing that was running?
Terry Donovan.
Gosh darn it.
Terry Donovan.
Sorry about that, Kerry Donovan. I thought she did a nice job of summoning it, but man, Lynch was just straight on quick punch to the face on the carpetbagger thing. I just don't know where it goes. I was fascinated too with Jerry Sonnenberg wins. And again, it's not like we're talking thousands of votes here. It's a handful of votes, but Jerry Sonnenberg wins. And Jerry was the guy that wouldn't take the bait, right? And if that's the way you view that question, Jerry's like, I don't want to ask any gotcha questions. And Jerry was kind of like the nicest guy up on the stage in many ways, although Peter Yu is a hell of a nice guy too. I was fascinated with the fact that he won. Lynch comes in second. Holtorf comes in fourth. Those are all rural dudes, right? Like none of those guys hail from any population center. So I don't know how reflective it is, but it was an interesting outcome.
Well, and it was a really great start to the campaign season. I thought you guys did it, considering what a circus it could have been, did a good job. I had a reporter there who wound up talking to Lauren Boebert in the parking lot afterwards, but
oh, wow.
It just, yeah, it's interesting with her because I understand when she says I had to move, I'm going to move, I had to take care of my boys.
Right.
Well, there's another option, which is you don't go to Congress when you have 4 boys, you stay home.
That's interesting.
You don't live next door to your ex-husband, but you don't have to go to Congress. There are other options.
It was Jesse Paul that pointed out too. I think he's like, look, the 3rd congressional district is so big. She could have moved away from her ex-husband and still been in the district, like moved away farther than she has already and still be within the 3rd congressional district. And I mean, listen, at the end of the day, I think you're absolutely right, Patty. I think the more people that are on the ballot in the primary, the more likely it is that she wins. But some of the response so far has been muted at best for her. And you can tell from the other candidates on the stage, nobody seems to be daunted by this. Nobody's bailing out of this race because they're like, it's over.
Yeah, she is not muted, but I think any supporters seem to be at the moment.
What else, when you watched that thing, what were some of the other things that you took interest in?
Frankly, I was interested in how affable everyone seemed. That was pretty fascinating. I think, just even listening to Holtorf and listening to Sonnenberg and listening to Lynch, I just thought everyone is kind of trying to be, not everyone, almost everyone, be a grown up in the room, really think about it. But it's a tight, even for all its vastness, it's a tight knit district just in the sense of, especially for this group, the rural issues and the issues, the anti-urban issues, or at least we will not be ignored forever issues. So I know that, for example, Deb Flora with Douglas County, you've got a huge population base for the district there, but for the rest of it, rural Colorado really wants a seat at the table and wants to be listened to. And I thought that came through.
I also had very little exposure to Richard Holtorf before he came into the studio here a week or two ago. And then before this thing, that dude's a character, man. It would mean whether it's for good or for bad, that dude is a big time character. I remember him answering the question about what he had been arrested for. And, it seemed like most everyone else was like, I had this traffic thing, like Sonnenberg. I had this traffic thing. I was going 8 billion miles an hour. Ted Harvey, we were goofing around on the Air Force Academy. And then Holtorf, I got in 2 fights. I told my dad that I was winning both of them until the cops showed up, and I thought, holy smokes, man. I mean, good grief. This dude just says stuff that, at least that's the other thing, is you can count on that guy saying what is ever in his head, because there's no guard. You know what I mean? It just comes out.
Right. He is not calculating what's going to get me elected. He's just like, here I am. I had run into him at the Colorado Restaurant Association the first day of the legislative session. They have a reception, and I ran into him there, and it was the same thing, literally a straight shooter.
Yeah.
And interesting to chat with him.
In fact, Lynch says both on the podium and later on when I'm talking to him one-on-one, he goes, no joke, man. Half the reason I keep coming to the Capitol is to just see what Holtorf does that day. You know what I mean? Just to see what interaction he has with other people. Did you take, here's what was also fascinating to me. And I think because it was the presence of Lauren Boebert there more than anything, but CD4 is a very short race. I mean, if you look at an R plus 27-ish district, this race is over at the end of June, one way or the other, right? Like the Democrats can throw as many people and as many dollars as they want into it. It's very unlikely they'll pull this off. CD8, on the other hand, is incredibly competitive. And there were 3 candidates up there. Did you get a chance to watch that one at all?
I sadly did not, but it sounded like it was fascinating.
It was fascinating.
I missed that one. I got the timing wrong.
There's a guy who's a political newcomer, never heard of him. Joe, can't remember his last name. Then there's a county commissioner out of Weld County who is also a former radio host, which tells you he's both good looking and a genius. And then Gabe Evans, who is a member of the legislature, former member of the Guard, also good looking and a genius, and a former police officer. And Gabe won the straw poll that evening. I don't think that tells you whether or not he beats necessarily Scott James in the primary, but that one is different too, because they now have to take on a incumbent Democrat as opposed to this open seat in the 4th. And they have to take it on a district that's drawn pretty tightly. So they can't go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. You know what I mean? They have to be conservative without being bonkers.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's going to be an amazing race as we go through the Supreme Court decision coming through on the presidential primary before March 5th, if they come through with a decision. And then we go straight into the state primaries. And we only have 3 months for those. So it's going to be a wild political season.
You know, if that 108 thing goes the way of the GOP, who's suing on this thing, there's a real possibility that every single nominee accesses the primary ballot only through assemblies, that there would not even Republican primary voters get a vote in a primary because it goes away. There would be no primary at all. And I just can't envision the logistics of how anything other than an assembly nominating process would unfold. And all of a sudden we're in the 1980s again.
Yeah. So that decision, and I hope it comes soon, because all these candidates better hope it comes soon too. It's fascinating because really, if the Republican Party is going to have 23% of the registered voters and the Democrats are going to have 28% of the registered voters in the state, I guess you can decide whether or not you're going to have a primary, but you have to figure out how to engage the rest of the state, since these are going to be the candidates they're voting for. So I have to say, I like letting unaffiliated voters vote in a state-run primary, state-subsidized primary.
Have you? Well,
and I just don't see the Republicans able to come up with anything if for some reason they triumph.
No, I don't either. I mean, I at one point asked, I can't remember if it was David Williams or whoever else that was a proponent of this, and I'd asked, well, look, what are the alternatives? And they were talking about how they might do their own thing. At one point, somebody, it may not have been Dave, described, you know, we can have neighborhood places where you can drop off your ballots, you know, and someone's sitting in their driveway or something like that. And I'm like, that's better than the drop boxes, you know, that get counted. Like, that's safer. I don't want to drop my ballot off with my neighbor, and I like my neighbors, but come on. The other aspect of this, have you followed at all Kent Theory's bill titles that have just made it through, I think, that they're going to try to put on the ballot?
Yeah, I have. And it's interesting because every time I try to wrap my brain around ranked choice voting and all the other, I mean, there are a lot of things he's talking about, but I just don't get it. But I'm willing to study it, and we're all going to have to study it if those get on the ballot, and I think they will.
I think the other thing that is intriguing to me is that these 3 different offerings amount to a dismantling of the current assembly structure. Like, there would be no more assembly. Like, precinct caucuses would go the way of the dodo. I don't know that people appreciate. I interviewed Kent last week on the radio. I don't know that people appreciate what a fundamental change in voting this would be, even without the ranked choice voting, just in the idea of going to a full, like, open/jungle primary, whether it's top 2 or top 4, move on, no caucuses. That is a sea change in how Coloradans pick their representatives.
Yeah, it's huge, and I don't think people have spent any time really figuring it out yet because they've just begun publicizing it. And so you have all the antics of the Republican Party right now, and whether or not everyone has to get. They've endorsed Trump, whether or not he'll be on the ballot on March 8th in Colorado legally. I mean, that's still coming. But in the meantime, there is just a huge, huge change coming for the state on those candidates. And if it passes, and Ken Theory's gotten things through before on the redistricting, he could do it.
Yeah, we're talking with Mist Denver, Patty Calhoun from Westword. Every day is another story about how Denver is getting crushed and its safety net is getting crushed by the influx of migrants into Denver. The latest story is this one here out of the Denver Post that shows that Denver Public Schools is now underwater $17.5 million in funding because of all of the new immigrant children who are being enrolled into the school district. Patty, you're right there all day, every day in Denver. How bad is this? And do you hear of any green shoots of resolution here? Like, what's our way forward on this?
Well, our way forward is what Mike Johnston is certainly pushing when he went to D.C., and Polis is now pushing in letters with other governors, which is to get some federal aid for this, especially for the schools. I also have to say, I was discussing this with my mother this morning. Amazing that these migrants, they move here and they get their kids in schools. That's the other thing. I mean, when you hear these tragic stories of these families that have made it here and why they made it here, your heart goes out to them. So your heart goes out to everyone else in Denver public schools because you don't want the other kids to be shortchanged. So obviously they're going to have to come up with some solutions. Going into last week's board meeting, for some reason, people were thinking the budget would be fine because all of a sudden they had more students. I think it might be the only school district county in the state that enrollment is increasing. And so they thought they would be getting more federal money anyway. And then I think the $17.5 million shortfall came as a big surprise to them. But yeah, there has to be a solution. And I don't think the solution is busing kids across the border.
Between this issue and I guess I don't know if it's a cousin or a corollary, but the homeless issue in Denver, when you're there all day, every day, I mean, the perception from people outside the metro area, because of the way the media is and whatnot, is, my God, there's a homeless person on every corner and there's a migrant on every corner trying to squeegee your windshield. What's it really like there? And I go there from time to time, but I'd rather hear your perspective.
Well, I'm downtown every day. And let me say, Friday night, for example, when we were the Liz Cheney speech, so that's at the Denver Performing Arts Complex, and we parked over like at 17th and Stout. So we were walking.
Oh, yeah.
I saw a total of one homeless person.
Wow.
6 blocks, one homeless person. When I was driving back from Channel 12, which is 29th and Welton, to my office at Lincoln
Been there.
13th, one tent. So there is no question downtown has been definitely cleaned up of encampments. Now, my home is very close to where the migrant encampment was and where the migrants are in a hotel at Spear and Zunai. And you do see some squeegee people, but no tents right now. So I think anyone who thinks downtown is just littered with people sitting on corners in tents begging for money, that's not the case.
When one of the great things about Westword, and you do this all the time too on CIO, is you follow all of the good social scene stuff as well as just the regular hard news stuff too. I mean, you do that also. What are some of the hidden gems out there in Denver that you're discovering? What are some of the great things going on? I mean, you don't have to bill for National Western Stock Show because it's everywhere. Everybody talks about it. But sometimes only Westword sheds some light on some of the other opportunities in Denver for people to either have a great meal or a great time. What is that?
Well, we do this all the time. And we had the new James Beard nominations are out, and their restaurants, the Wolf Taylor, which was a Michelin restaurant, just got a nomination also on Tennyson Street for the James Beard. So you want to keep or I should say the hospitality group that owns it, you want to keep an eye on these guys. Bruto downtown. There are a lot of really great restaurants downtown. Also downtown, there are 2 really cool events going on at Redline Contemporary Art, if you know that. Great shows. if you're not going downtown, you are really missing a bet. There are some good shows downtown at the Denver Performing Arts Complex, but you also have good shows like You're in Town, and that is exactly the name. You're in
What?
Town is at the Town Hall Arts Center. URINE Town is at the Town Hall Arts
What,
Center, and that's a great show.
What the hell is that, Patty? That sounds, I don't know. It's like when my kids laugh when I say, European. And they're like, no, I'm not.
It is a musical based on, as I understand, I haven't seen it, a company that basically it doesn't want employees to take bathroom breaks.
What?
George, I'm going to make you research it.
What the heck? I don't know that you're going to catch me buying any of the T-shirts they're selling in the lobby, although those might be hotcakes, right? But You're in Town sounds fascinating.
Not
Patty,
the women's bathroom, only in the gender-neutral bathrooms.
that's it. Well, who doesn't go to those? Last question for you. You're following anything in the legislature? Anything that's got your attention?
Oh, there's so many things in the legislature and the things that aren't there yet. For example, what we're going to see in the way of affordable housing, what we're going to see in the way of right now, there's a move to maybe raise the fees for medical marijuana patients, like the only people who still are kind of at the soul of why there was legalization on a certain level, to help the people who actually use it medically, which is increasingly older people, and raise the rates on them. So that's a move we'll be keeping an eye on, because for the most part, only people who truly use it as medicine are getting those licenses. Everything's pretty cheap. Otherwise,
I was going to say.
So yes, we're watching that. We're watching the eviction stuff. There are just huge issues coming up. And of course, just watching the races. Tim Hernandez is having a fundraiser tonight. He is definitely opposed. He was appointed, and now he's definitely opposed Elizabeth Epps' competition. So
I was going to ask about these. What do you sense out there? There's probably no polling on these races, but it sounds like it's not just, I think I'll run against Tim Hernandez or Epps. Like, these are well-funded, supported efforts to get these two out of the legislature.
The money is really coming in, and they're Democrats. One who was up against Hernandez for this vacant seat, a retired judge, she's running again. And you've got some very strong competition against Epps. So I think those are going to be wild, wild races.
I just had Rose Pugliese on, the new minority leader, and she had said, I didn't know this, I didn't see this report anywhere, that Epps is only appearing remotely for the legislature. I mean, we're in the post-pandemic era here. Do you know why that is? Had you heard that?
No, it has been said that it's some health thing.
Oh, okay.
But no one seems to know what it is. Well,
mental? No, I'm kidding. I am joking. If it's health thing, then it's a non-story. I don't care. I just thought it was one of those things where, her last bit of time there was pretty controversial as she sat in that peanut gallery there and got confronted by her own leadership and stuff like that. And then pretty soon she was getting moved into another building. And I'm like, what the hell is, and there's innocuous answers for us. It just got crazy. Like, what are you guys doing out there?
Right. So we're going to see at some point, certainly, if she is really running, and she is, she says she's running, but she will have to show up in person somewhere. And presumably, if you're running, I guess you have to figure out what your health issue is. If you can't go into the legislature, can you really represent your constituents?
That's a great question, because I'll tell you who else would want to know the answer to that is probably Stephanie Luck, who's on maternity leave. Like, my guess is she'd be able to continue to serve remotely, other than the fact that she's caring for a new baby, but there's got to be some limitation on that. Listen, Patty Calhoun, we've taken up so much of your time. Thank you for joining us again. Folks, if you want to see all the great stuff that Westword puts out there, including all the stuff we talked about at the end with the restaurants, the art scene, all the other entertainment stuff, you got to go to westword.com. Patty, thanks for this.
Oh, my pleasure.
Love having you on. Talk to you soon. That was Patty Calhoun with Westword. Apparently, I didn't do that punch out as well. I kept waiting for anyway. I like Patty a lot. I think that, and there are folks out there who I'm sure are like, Westword, you got to read Westword. I mean, listen, I don't always agree with the articles and stuff, but they do cover stuff at a different level. They just have a Denver eye for a bunch of these issues, and that's why it's Denver centric. But some of the cool stuff that they do is related, I'm not kidding, to the restaurants and the clubs and the other art stuff. You just find out things there that you wouldn't find out otherwise, and you can go check it out at westword.com. Listen, when we come back, we were talking about Hamas loving Timmy Hernandez. That's a nice segue into something horrible that took place over the weekend involving some soldiers in a country I was just in 1 year ago. We'll talk about that and what it means for America. What should it mean for America? When we come back, it's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. My thanks to Patty Calhoun from Westword. Patty Calhoun is Westword, for that matter. Listen, wanted to change up topics here a little bit. I want to read you a couple of the texts so that we got to. What area was Patty in that had no homeless in Denver? Not sure that place exists. Now, I know when she was talking about leaving PBS 12 from 29th and Welton, because we were there at the same time. And we had done that Colorado Inside and Out that PBS 12 puts on. A great show with Kyle Dyer. She always does such a nice job with it. And the guests are always so nice. I was, once again, I think the token Republican dude, which I love being the token. But I drove out of that area too. And I don't recall seeing any homeless. I have, by the way, a bunch in parts of Denver. Hell, Billy and I usually, and although it's not as much, Billy, we usually see a little teeny tiny village that pops up on a daily basis down here by 225 and Parkerish Road or the Dam Road, but not as many. I still see onesies, twosies, but not what we were seeing before. And then, so I didn't see any there. And I'm starting to see an increasing number of people with the squeegees that apparently they're stealing from gas stations. I see an increasing number of them, but I get it, man, where, if Patty tells you she's walking down from 17th and Stout, which is kind of by the Ghost building, which is a super cool building. If you've ever been there, there used to be a restaurant in there, 6 blocks and never encountered any homeless. One, I don't know why you're walking 6 blocks down Stout in the nighttime anyway. I mean, you're just begging for something other than homeless bad, but she did, and it was totally fine. And so I see that. I can see that that's happening. And maybe this is some reflection of good things that are taking place based on the efforts of Mayor Johnston. I don't know. Is it too soon to know? I think it is, especially because this migrant thing is crushing Denver. Let's see, another... Someone talked about the pit bull thing. That was our buddy Corey. Someone says the Colorado Speaker Series. This must have been that thing with Liz Cheney that they were just talking about here. Yep, the event details. That was on the 26th, Belco Theater. No, missed it. Sorry about that. Good morning from Nebraska, fellas. I think Colorado is living in a police state. No, not quite, Jacqueline. It's not a police state yet. It is. Yeah, it's increasing. Well, it's a different kind of police. Billy asked with the Dems in charge. It's a different kind of police, but I don't think that's it, man. I don't think that's it. Here's when the criminal justice system fails, vigilantism is the next logical step. I don't know if it's the next logical step, but it's the next predictable step. That's for sure. I agree with you that when people stop trusting that law enforcement can protect them or their property, they're going to start making decisions to protect it themselves. And then I don't know what the hell is going to happen. And then somebody texted, and COVID is still raging, George. Don't be ignorant. Well, I can't help the ignorant part. It happens. It's DNA stuff. I can't help that. LOL, of course, the Democrats could choose last minute in their convention other than Biden. By the way, as an aside, if COVID is raging, why aren't we dropping by the bushelsfuls, right? Like, we're not in masks. We're not all locked up at home instead of going to school. I don't know what's going on there, but if it's raging, we're doing a pretty nice job of weathering that. I'm not sure how that is. Another text from Joan. I think that Dave must be doing okay when media does hit pieces. You missed the Westword piece on Dave Williams that came out Thursday. It was not very nice. You're right. I didn't see that one. I might go take a look at that as well. And of course, we always love having Dave on the show. He's never afraid to come in and have a conversation with us. So I appreciate that quite a bit. Listen, here's the topic that I want. Well, we have a caller on the line. Billy, is this someone we ought to take on air? Or should we just shift into the other gear here? Billy. Buddy, is this for on air?
I'm sorry, I was talking to someone on the phones. What was that?
Is this for an on air call, or I just didn't want to shift gears?
Yeah, there's a caller.
Do we want to do it right now?
Didn't really finish screening him, but go ahead, just take a cold.
Oh, let's go crazy. Who is it?
Didn't get that far.
Please tell me it's Justin Schreiber.
No, it isn't.
No. Come on. That guy, that's the guy, by the way, that should have been at the forum that the Women of Weld and the Lincoln Club of Colorado put on in Fort Lupton last Thursday. And he didn't, because he thought that me being a moderator would be election tampering and witness tampering. I don't know. It still makes me laugh out loud. Oh, Frank, you're on 710 KUS. Frank, what do you think?
Oh, I got a kick out of that guy Holtorf. He was on another radio show, and he does not have quite the filter that most folks have. I'm not sure that's good in Congress. I think our representative in Congress should be somebody that's really espouses our agenda, and if we can put some of the other stuff behind, we got to look for what's best for the Republican and the conservative movement. That's my comment on those guys. But the other thing was your first speaker today, Pugliese, is talking about some of the ideas that the Dems had about shutting down charter schools and you can't carry your gun outside your house. You know, I think it's almost like when these guys come up with their Democratic left-wing wet dream scenario, it's time for us, the people, which is supposed to be what the government is for, to rebound or come back with a legislation to go on the ballot, an initiative, get enough signatures, that any legislator that introduces an anti-constitutional movement should be removed immediately, thereby, neutering most of these crazy people.
Yeah, but who determines that, Frank? Who would get to decide whether it's anti-constitutional?
Well, if it doesn't pass the constitutional test,
But who determines that? I like the idea, but tell me who's going to be the arbiter of that.
Well, so is keeping somebody saying that you can only have your guns inside your house, is that constitutional?
Yeah, I don't think it is, but they're going to say something like, listen, the Second Amendment isn't absolute and it isn't universal.
Sure, there's arguments for everything. That's why you went to law school.
No, I get it, but I'm saying then who's going to make that decision? Like they offer that bill, the Dems presumably would pass it. Who steps in and goes, aha, you all lose your jobs?
I don't think you can put it to a left-leaning Colorado Supreme Court. but anyway, then how about the one for charter schools? Is that anti-constitutional? I mean, these things need to be answered, and government needs to be hammered out in a bipartisan fashion if it's going to be for the people. Otherwise, you get what you got now, which is just trying to have the overrun of one party, and that's wrong.
I agree with that. I think that at the end of the day, the arbiter of all those things, short of taking each one to court, is going to ultimately be the voters. And you and I are just stuck in a minority position right now in a state that
Democratic machine.
Yeah, Democrat machine. It's surged blue in so many areas. It overwhelms the other moderate and Republican areas. I mean,
and you only stay here because it's such a beautiful state. But hey, do you know what nullification is?
In terms of jury nullification, yes.
Well, there's a book. There's a guy named Frank Salvato. He's on your late night 710.
Yeah.
And he wrote a book called Nullification. And he's espousing a position that the states' rights to nullify some of these orders that come down from the feds if they're going directly against what the feds are supposed to be doing in the first place, a la the Texas deal with Abbott and versus Biden, v. Biden. So I don't know. I don't know the book. He makes some interesting points. I don't know which states are.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'd like to talk to that guy.
But the book is called Nullification, and the guy's very outspoken and very smart. So I don't know. I mean,
I wonder, again, same kind of question we led with, though, and maybe I need to get him on the radio or read his book, but who gets to decide that? Like right now, Ken Paxton down there, the AG in Texas, has taken that position when it comes to the border patrol guys being able to cut through the razor wire at that one park. He's taken that position too, which is show me where you have the authority to do this in this area.
If you get Billy to get him on your show and you lead with him some morning, hang on, you're going to have a good 3 hours.
Billy, I'd like him on tomorrow. I'm just telling him, I'd like him on tomorrow, Billy.
Well, he really raises some interesting points, and he doesn't have a filter either. But
that is good radio.
Well, he's got logic behind him, though. He's not just off the cuff. He's well-read and seasoned and opinionated. So Frank Salvato, Nullification.
Well, Frank, I appreciate that. The only other one that Rose talked about that I'm still baffled by how they can do it is she said an expansion of Red Flag. And I'm like, well, who's left? Now your teacher, Phil Weiser, all these people.
You made a good point, spilling over into other states. That's just a way to improve. I mean, these are topics that the left wants to shut the right down with. And they know they're going to get a reaction. I think they're just floating this because they're really probably pretty nervous about the November election.
They should be nervous about the November election. I have seen so much positive news about the economy, and it appears to have very little impact so far on Biden's polling numbers. I mean, they ought to be freaked out here. Maybe they think it's going to become resurgent here in the next 6 months or so and help get him through. And it could. But, man, things don't look great.
It's going to be based on the price of eggs in October.
Yeah, I wonder if we'll see that drop. Frank, as always, man, thanks for the reference to the book and thanks for the call.
Look into it.
I will. Hey, Bill, you're about to jump on there to say you've read Nullification.
No, not at all. It was interesting that Frank brought up the idea about price of eggs and things. That was one of the things that, again, I'm an idiot. During the vacation times that I wasn't here, I spent some time going back and looking at some of the prices and things like that, and and just looking at some timeline stuff. There's some other research I was doing for another thing, and this is one of the things that kind of popped into my head. Looking back at the majority of the increase of the price of eggs and chicken and turkey during that early part of the Biden administration, it correlates, oddly enough, with the outbreak of the avian flu several months earlier, in which they had to down millions upon millions of chickens. So why would Biden launch the avian flu? Exactly. And that's kind of the idea, is this is more of an external characteristic of the market than a policy. There are things to throw rocks at Biden and the Biden administration about. Border, that immigrants, I'm sorry, I had something on the throat. Yeah, there's just something there. There are things, but that's one that's not really going to resonate. In fact, if you watch, there's a outbreak of avian flu in the last month or so in California. We are going to see chicken prices rise again in the next couple of months because they've had to cull nearly 1,000 birds out of the flocks. So that's going to be a problem. Just letting you know, your chicken prices are going to go up. I'm just telling you right now.
By cull them out, do they send them to a special rehab place?
No, what they do is they bring them over into a little room and they tell them it's a. No, I'm sorry, I can't do that. That was going to be a really bad joke.
No, you can't.
I can't. No, stopping. No. There's sometimes that that's okay. I'm gonna go punish myself.
They don't
bad
go.
Billy over here in the
they
corner.
don't like try to asphyxiate him by choking him, and they're not choking the chicken because that would be absolutely horrific, both in reality and in Punville. Listen, let's do this. Let's cut away for a break. We got a little bit of a segment left here. We can try to continue to advance a topic. Launch a topic that I've been trying to get to, and that is what took place over in Jordan over the weekend. You've got to be familiar with this. If you're not, we'll make you familiar with it. But before I do that, I got to quickly tell you, if you're a dude, and it doesn't apply to a ton of women. I don't know any women that have done it, but I'm sure they would do it if it was necessary. But I'm talking about hair. There are a lot of guys out there who are in that place where they can eyeball their mom's side of the family because that's where you get your hair genetically. I think it goes down that line. All of the men on my mom's side of the family have had full heads of hair all the way until the grave. And so I'm optimistic I get to keep mine. But if you're not that lucky, and that's all it is just luck, or maybe it's the stress, and you're dealing with thinning hair or balding or patches of this or that, there's only a few options you have, but one of them is to call up our friend Dr. Tanya Pauls with Advanced Hair Restoration. That's the best option because what they can do is restore your hair, give you that natural, more youthful look. It gives you that confidence, that energy. It's a simple one-day treatment. They have the most experienced folks in the area out there. Next day, your own natural hair starts growing. I could go on and on, but I don't need to because you're hooked, right? Give them a call and ask them all the questions you need to before you sign up with them. 720-459-HAIR, 720-459-HAIR, or check them out at advancedhair.com. That's advancedhair.com. When we come back, we'll wrap up this hour and we'll get into, I promise you, we're going to get into this Jordan topic here in just a second. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Going to try to get to the phone lines as quickly as we can. Sean, you're on 710. Sean, what do you think?
I just wanted to comment on the avian influenza and how they call the fox.
Yeah.
I worked in public health a long time ago, and I'm back in public health again, but I'm doing something completely different.
Right.
But I actually went to a demonstration of how they did this in case of H1 or H5N1 virus, which is the avian flu virus. They pretty much use like what would be equivalent to like the foam that you would see in a plane crash, and they try to suffocate them.
What?
Yeah.
How do they do that?
They spray them. They get them all in one area, and they spray them with this foam, and they hope to suffocate them. And obviously, they don't get into the food supply because they are infected with a virus that possibly can jump to humans. It has, but it hasn't sustained human-to-human transmission. But there are cases of it where it has shown up in humans.
Well, Sean,
so, yeah, it's.
Thank you for making us smarter on that,
foam.
man. Thanks for taking time out of your day to do that. That helps. Hey, listen, when we come back, we got to talk about this drone stuff and what's the Navy doing with recruiting. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
The U.S. says that 3 soldiers are dead and at least 25 others are wounded after a drone attack on a military base in Jordan near its border with Syria. Now, this attack targeted a base known as Tower 22. This is right across the Syrian border and very, very close to a U.S. military base in Syria that's been run by Special Operation Forces as part of their anti-Islamic State fight for years. Now, militia groups in Iraq have claimed this attack. They say they launched a drone targeting the U.S. forces. It remains unclear just how bad the damage is on the base. However, we've heard from U.S. President Joe Biden, who said that the U.S. is willing to retaliate at a time and a place of its choosing in the future. And all of this comes as we've seen wider tensions in the Middle East over Israel's ongoing war with Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Now, the attack was claimed by these Iraqi militia groups that are part of an umbrella organization backed by Iran. This is just another sign of just how unstable the Middle East is. We have seen other attacks claimed by Iranian-backed militias in the wider region since the Israeli war on Hamas began. That includes attacks by the Houthis on shipping in the Red Sea, as well as cross-border attacks by Lebanon's Hezbollah group on Israel. Moving forward, it remains unclear exactly what will happen next, but it shows just how wide the conflict has grown and just how dangerous it's become in the wider Middle East.
That's an AP report right here on the George Show 710 KNUS, highlighting the tragedy that took place in northern Jordan near the Syrian border, where U.S. service members, 3 of them, were killed. So far, I don't see a number, but they say many wounded during one of these drone attacks. It looked like it was kind of like a kamikaze drone, like it was some of these things are designed to just fly in and explode. Very difficult, especially if you see these ones that they have out there. They have these drone swarms that are out there. Very, very difficult to defend against. But that finally happened. It was destined to happen, by the way. You know, the constant probing by the Iranian-backed militias and other groups out there, as well as like the Yemenis, the Houthis out there. It was bound to happen that one of them would get through and some damage would be done. And that appears to be what happened. But it got my attention because the Colorado National Guard has 2 sister countries, if you will, that fit within the state partnership program, SPPs. And one of them is Slovenia, which is very, very close to Italy. And also not a hotbed of really too much going on right now. Important country, don't get me wrong, but just not the hotbed that the Middle East remains. Our other SPP is Jordan. I was there a year ago this month. In fact, a little bit more than 12 months ago, I was there to assist as they continue to work to stand up an operational law component of their military. Now, because of that fact, when I heard that there were U.S. service members killed and injured, my instant thought is, were these any of our folks? So far, I haven't heard of anything. It could be, my hope is, I pray it's not. I mean, you don't want it to be any Americans. But that got my attention. Well, the result of this thing is that you have a ton of Republicans now clamoring for something must be done. Even Biden has said in some very strongly worded speeches that something's going to happen and people are going to pay, words to that effect. So far, nothing. There are offers or suggestions that he should attack some more of these Iranian-supported groups, these other proxy groups. But that's not enough for the Republicans, folks. There are folks out there, including Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, John Cornyn, Tom Cotton. I mean, these are big-time folks, right, that are asking for something much, much more. Here's a couple quotes. Mitch McConnell is calling for the president to issue serious, crippling costs to Iran, not only frontline terrorist proxies, but on their Iranian sponsors who wear American blood as a badge of honor. That's talking about striking in Iran. Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, senior senator there to Tim Scott, said that the U.S. attacks outside Iran, the U.S. attacks on the Iranian proxies outside Iran, quote, will not deter Iranian aggression. And he called for the U.S. to strike targets of significance inside Iran. Tom Cotton, the only answer to these attacks must be devastating military retaliation against Iran's terrorist forces, both in Iran and across the Middle East. Anything less will confirm Joe Biden as a coward, unworthy of being commander-in-chief. Damn. That's strong. Senator John Cornyn, dude from Texas, said on X / whatever it was, Twitter, target Tehran. He said he wants the U.S. to strike Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and its Quds Force branch. Folks, that's a big deal here. That's a big, big deal. Because those steps right there, and by the way, don't hear me to say I don't think that they're warranted. We just have to have a conversation about, is that what you want to see us do? Because that will broaden the war in a big, big way. And you know that Iran has been hoping for this. Iran wants to further involve the United States into the Middle East. They want to suck them in there. And you know that their ultimate goal is to broaden this war across the Muslim Middle East, make it very difficult for us to maintain allied relationships with folks if we move in on Iran. Now, there was a time, I'm not going to relitigate how this happened. There was a time when we could count on Iran being completely immersed and distracted in their war with Iraq next door. But we ended that. We ended that when we took out the Iraqi army, and then we took out Saddam Hussein, their Iraqi leader. Again, I'm not telling you that wasn't warranted. What I'm saying is, once we take that guy away that keeps Iran in check and costs them all that money, all those soldiers, all that materiel, now they're freed up to do other stuff. We also know that Iran is partnered up with Russia. We know that Russia plays in Syria. This effort here to condemn Iran, I agree with that. I do think it's Iran. But let's just make sure that we're clear on what we're talking about doing. We strike Iran. We broaden this war. Are we ready for that? Are we ready to keep us engaged in a longer-term conflict with more than just making sure that Israel has the opportunity to free itself of Hamas? And it should do that, in my opinion. But we're going to broaden this thing. And we're now going to put Iraq, which is its own mess, into a pickle. Saudi Arabia, Jordan itself. These are all things that will test them if we were to go into Iran. Doesn't mean they turn on us. It just means it makes it harder for them. How about Turkey, man? What does Turkey do? Should we, in response to them murdering these three soldiers, these three American soldiers, and injuring, and we don't even know how bad the injuries are. They could have crippled these people, blinded them, something. Should we go in and blow up something in Iran? Should we take it to Iran? 303-696-1971. Text, my nephew is an U.S. Army Apache helicopter pilot who returned recently from Syria just before Christmas. On Christmas Day, a drone carrying a 20-pound IED that exploded near a tent he used to work in. A piece of shrapnel hit a fellow pilot in the head, piercing his skull. Jesus. Last we knew, he was still in a medically induced coma in a hospital in Landstuhl, Germany. Dang, man. That is... and that's not a casualty that you normally see reported because it wasn't a death. Right? The deaths get all the attention when sometimes some of the worst things that can happen to someone get underreported because they still have a pulse. 303-696-1971 is the number. Bill from Parker, you're on 710. Bill, what do you think, man?
Morning, George.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I assume that our adversaries are not stupid. You say what you want about the mullahs. I don't think they're stupid. And we also know that, as you alluded to, they have some type of a relationship with Putin, a mutually beneficial relationship with Putin. And here they go stirring the pot, making things difficult for Biden in the run up to an election. What would you expect would be the result of making things difficult for Biden in the run up to an election? What would be the result of that?
I don't know if they have a goal in mind that's geopolitical like that. I don't. I mean, I think to some extent this is an opportunity for them, right? Because who could have predicted, well, except Iran, who helped plan it, who could have predicted the response by Israel in Gaza and the world reaction to it, and that creating its own issue for Biden? I think some of this is they light a fuse, they're not really sure where it goes, but then once something blows up, then they respond to that too.
So they're just generic chaos lovers type of thing? Is that the theory?
I wouldn't call it chaos or generic. I would say that they have these coordinated Israeli-sponsored groups that are out there, these Iranian-backed militias and whatnot. I think there is some coordination there, absolutely. But I think the goal is a unified goal, and that is they want to suck the U.S. back into the Middle East, and they want to make it hard for us to push for peace and to develop our allied relationships with Muslim countries. That's my guess.
Well, that may be, but I would say they're smart enough to know, and Putin certainly is smart enough to know, that what they're doing makes life difficult for Joe Biden. It's going to be all over Fox News that he has to do something, and he's going to be pushed into making a decision perhaps against his better judgment, and that'll all play to weakening him in the coming election. They have to know that, and if they weaken him, what does that mean? That means they've strengthened Trump. There's no other way to look at it.
Well, you obviously have an idea behind why they'd want Trump over Biden. What is it?
I don't necessarily know why. I just know that it seems that they do have a reason. And I could speculate that the reason why is because, first of all, Putin with Trump would end his problems in Ukraine overnight, probably, I assume, for Putin. All right. So there's a big reason right there. And the Iranians.
So hold on. Just so that I'm clear, Bill, you think that Iran's interest in this is coordinated with Russia because they know if Biden's gone, Russia gets the benefit of likely having whatever they want from Ukraine?
Well, I don't think they particularly care about that, but Putin, to the extent that they care about Putin being in their camp or helping them in their corner of the world, then they'd be happy to help Putin with his problems. Okay. And one way to help Putin with his problems is to get Trump back in office. I think that's clear. Okay. So
do you think that they expect us to respond? Do you think that Iran expects us to respond in Iran, or do you think that they're playing a game of chicken here?
They might be playing a little bit of game of chicken, although, yeah, they might be. But like I said, they're just trying to put Biden in a spot where he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. And that's what they want. They want Biden out of there so they can have their fun with Trump, who they know they can play like a fiddle. They know his vanities. They know his well, remember when we went to Saudi Arabia, they broadcast his face on the side of that building.
I know, man. They know that guy.
I mean, they can play this guy like a fiddle. Putin's playing 4-dimensional chess and Trump's playing tic-tac-toe. I mean, it's unbelievable.
When you look at the situation, Bill, what do you want to see America do in response to this drone attack and the deaths of the U.S. soldiers?
Yeah. Boy, I'm just not that strategic in that type of thing. I think they have to be smacked and smacked hard.
Inside Iran? Inside Iran?
Boy, I don't know, but I tell you, I like the way Israel does it. Israel does it so that all of a sudden something goes horribly wrong in Iran and no one knows what happened, except everybody does know what happened. I like that kind of response where you're not in their face saying, okay, we blew up your this or that, but it just goes poof and no one says anything about what happened. And the Iranians don't want to blame anybody because they don't want to admit they got hit inside their country. So they're a little bit loath to say, oh, you just blew up our soldiers. You know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see, if they're going to sow chaos, I'd like to see the U.S. and Israel, and maybe some others, execute a plan that I know they have to go in there and completely castrate their nuclear program.
Yeah, I don't know if they have that or not. I mean, they might, but Bill, my concern is this. I don't think Iran would want to hide that they were the victims of some sort of subterfuge or secret attack by
they have in the past.
Except
They
right
haven't
now,
tested-
if the goal of the drones, because you can't believe that the goal of the drones is to win the war. They're not going to do that. And they can't imagine that if they cause a few American casualties, we're going to tuck tail and run like we did in Afghanistan, even if the same guy's in charge. There's got to be some other goal.
We did in Lebanon, like we did in Lebanon under Reagan. Remember 200-something dead Marines were pulled out of there a week later?
Yeah,
okay.
I don't know if you remember what happened. Are you talking about Khobar Towers or?
No, yeah, I'm talking about where they did that truck bomb and killed 200 Marines in Lebanon.
Yeah.
And under Reagan and in 83, and then we were out of there in 2 seconds.
Yeah. But my point is they can't believe this is going to cause that. I got to believe that they're interested in pulling us into a broader conflict. What else would be the reason for this?
I don't know. I mean, you've got they're smitten with Islam, and Islam is, don't get me going on that. It was founded by a warlord and a war criminal who, sanctified all his actions and examples, and they're beholden to that. They're very upset with the idea that Israel and Saudi Arabia get together and make peace because they're bitter enemies with both of those. So I like to say it's too complicated for me to know for sure, but I just have to know that they know that they are disempowering Biden to do this stuff at this time. And I just wonder why. Why do they want to do that?
But it sounds like you have a thought on that, right?
Well, I would thought that they want Trump to win. Now, beyond that, the details of that, I don't know. Like I said, Putin would love it because that would help him in Ukraine. So the Iranians want to help Putin because, he's in Syria, okay? And Iraq is a Shia country. There's Shia in Syria. So there's an affinity there. There's an interest there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I did a little bit of looking here while we're sitting here talking. It was 1983. Hezbollah killed 241 U.S. military personnel, including 220 Marines, 18 sailors, and 3 soldiers in a terrorist bombing at the Marine Corps barracks in Beirut, Lebanon. I'm taking a look here to just see.
We pulled out, and that was under Reagan. That wasn't under Jimmy Carter or anything.
Yeah. Well, 1983. Yeah, of course it is. But again, that's less the answer than this thing right here. I just don't think they believe we're going to pull out of Jordan of all places, given our relationship there. Not quite Lebanon. That's just not quite Lebanon. Yeah. Hey, listen, let's do this.
And they can miscalculate. Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead, Bill. Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, George.
All right, Bill. Thanks for the call. Listen, the phone lines were full there. Bill's line is open, 303-696-1971. What's the answer here? It looks like Iran was behind the bombing, the droning, and killing of 3 U.S. service members and injuring varying degrees of injuries as far as I know. And I don't know the number of victims yet. I just haven't seen that update. If you know of it, let me know about it. 303-696-1971 is the number. I want to get to Tony and Lewis and everybody else that's calling up on this thing, but I don't want to do it right this minute because I want to take an opportunity to tell you about something, and that is our good friends at Ultra Botanica. We had those 2 fellas on last week, I think on Friday, to talk about some of the cool stuff that they're doing in addition to the Ultra Cur, some of the products that they have. They haven't rolled them out for like wide scale sort of publicity, but they're available to look at and I think even purchase on the website, getultranow.com, getultranow.com. You know that the product that we keep talking about is this awesome one, Ultra Cur, which is based on curcumin, but it's like curcumin on steroids. Like they have figured out a way to patent this thing. They talked about the barrier that takes place between getting all the benefits of curcumin and the human body, and they've figured out a way to lessen that barrier so you get more of the benefits. You can get a 3-day free sample of this stuff at your natural grocers. All you got to do is go walk right in there. A lot of reasons to go, by the way, to the natural grocers. Great store. Like a Sprouts or a Whole Foods. Prices are great. But you go in there, you ask for the vitamin manager and you say, hey, can I get a 3-day free supply? If you don't go ask the vitamin manager, you can't have the 3-day free supply. It's just, they got to keep track of it because folks come in and grab it all up because it's awesome and it's free. Well, you want the 3-day free supply. They talked about the studies, all the people that are experiencing, some people experiencing benefits within less than 2 hours of taking this thing. Antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. It just helps overall with your health. Check them out at getultranow.com. That's getultranow.com. When we come back, Tony, Lewis, whoever else is calling in at 303-696-1971. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, talking about the killing of 3 U.S. Armed Forces members and the injuring of numbers of others through this Iranian-backed militia, kind of like a proxy drone attack that took place from Iran. The calls from Republicans throughout the Senate are, we've got to hammer Iran, not just a little demonstration, but like crush them. That would certainly broaden the war and involve us deeper in the Middle East, just as we thought maybe we were starting to extricate ourselves. What do you think about all that stuff? 303-696-1971. Tony, you're on 710 KNUS. What do you think?
Hey, good morning, George.
Good morning.
I take probably I liked your analysis, first of all, but I take probably a little different view of it.
Tell me.
You and I talked probably around October 10th or something, shortly after the invasion by Hamas and then the response by Israel. And I'd said to you at that time, I think it was absolutely the right thing to do. Israel has a right to defend itself. I also said to you, I remember on that day, now whatever Israel does, when Biden came in and said, we have got their back, we would carry, the world will think of us as the world thinks of Israel. And I also
Those
pointed
are
out
words
that time,
he said, man?
Well, immediately. He said, we have Israel's back, absolutely, unequivocally.
I get that
every
part,
day.
but when they think of Israel, they'll think of us. Is that what he said?
Well, I'm saying the rest of the world would then, I misspoke. I'm saying the rest of the world, however they view Israel, they were going to view us because we are, backing Israel through this fight. And I said to you at the time, if the death toll once it reached 20,000, and I kind of just picked that number as 1% of their population. When it reached 1% of their population, shit would hit the crap would hit the fan. Sorry, the crap would hit the fan. And that's basically what's happened. A genocide, lawsuit by South Africa, the Houthis attacking it, the transportation through the Red Sea, and now the more of Hezbollah, all the shots, and now this shooting. And I said, if we have any soldiers die, then it risks being enlarged. Now, having said that, I don't think they want us in there. They want us out. Iran wants us out. Nothing terrified Iran more than the U.S. negotiating the deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel to recognize one another, open diplomatic channels, all
they
that.
Want to see it. But how does this advance that goal?
This is just the natural escalation of tensions, and they're expecting to be struck. They're not maybe in Iran, but they're expecting the U.S. to launch back, and we're going to launch at something. Either we're going to devastate the Houthis, or in some way, or we're going to hit Hezbollah. We're going to hit somebody, and I know we're looking for whatever that balanced step should be. But the answer is, bottom line, we have a right in our backing of Israel to demand that Israel, quietly, behind the scenes, publicly, whatever it takes, Israel has to fight this war a little bit differently than they are. So Israel's lost the moral high ground in this war. They've lost the moral high ground. On October 7th, the world was behind them. Now the world is against them. Israel needs to take a different approach.
What's that mean, What's the different approach?
Well, when we go in and fight a war in the Middle East, we're the superpower, and we could bomb every neighborhood to oblivion because we're the superpower. We could do that, and we don't. We pay the price. We fight street to street. We risk our soldiers trying to protect their civilians. Israel is not doing that. They need to do that. They need to stop obliterating the Gazans. It does not. I know everybody says, 90% of them are all bad. Well, one, don't buy that. Two, that's not selling with the world. They need to fight this war where they can reclaim, if you will, the moral high ground. And an idea with I'm not sure it works, but the bottom line would be, okay, Israel clears out the north, start moving the Gazans back to the north that they control, and give them medical supplies and food and water so children don't die of diarrhea. I mean, that's the type of thing they need to do to reclaim the moral high ground. And we're in there backing them. And now we're tangled up in an escalating
I'm not sure, Tony,
violence.
anything they do at this point is going to change the minds and the screams from those who are anti-Zionist, anti-Israeli, anti-Jew from denouncing them. It won't matter what
You're
they
right.
do.
You're right. You're right. The most extreme of the world, that's not going to change them at all. But all those other people that are sitting on the middle, the Jordanians, the Saudis, all those other people are right now being forced into the camp with Iran, if you will, on this issue, in taking a strong position against Israel / the United States. So I'm simply saying, I think the best approach right now, take our shot, whatever that shot is. Iran is expecting it. By the way, keep in mind, Iran, in showing that they don't want us involved, and this is really important, they're only bringing uranium to 60% level, not 90.
Yeah.
90 is what they need for bombs. And they brought it right to 60. 90 is a small hurdle, but they know the minute they do, they're going to have to tangle with Israel and the United States.
Probably Israel.
They
I don't know
want
what
to.
the United States does, but I think Israel
The United
ends them.
States isn't going to allow it any more than Israel's going to allow it.
I want to believe you on that, Tony. I'm not convinced in a presidential re-election year with all the voices that Biden has got both in and outside of his head. It seems to me that nothing is a certainty if this guy is that desperate to get reelected. But Tony, let me say this, and I want to let you go so I can get to Lewis and Ralph as well. Thank you for the phone call. Very thoughtful as always. Well informed. I don't think I necessarily agree. I'm not sure Iran's efforts here are to get the U.S. out at this moment. It feels, and maybe it is. It feels like it's intended to get a response from us that will ultimately draw us more deeply into this. Or maybe they're calling Biden's bluff. Maybe Bill's right about this in a different way, and that is they're calling Biden's bluff. They don't think he has the guts to do something in response because he's worried about being stuck in another one of these Middle East things. Maybe that's it. 303-696-1971. Lewis from Aurora, you're on 710. Lewis, what do you think?
George, I told you months ago, this has to take place. I told you that if you're not ready for Armageddon, you need to get ready.
Is that what this is, Lewis? Is this the beginning of Armageddon?
Listen. The Iranians, if you understand Islam, they want to bring in the 12th Imam, the Mahdi, okay? This is building up to this final climax that they want to happen. But we know that Christ is the one to return. But before his return to rapture, to take his people up, the battle has to take place. And all this that's going on, the battle is that if Islam can prove to the world that Allah is God, that means Jehovah isn't. But we have read the end of the book. It's called the Bible. And Jehovah, Christ, wins. But this is where we're headed to. You remember I called you months ago?
I do, but
about this.
Are you telling me then, Lewis, that you think we are in end times right now? Like this is all about the apocalypse? And if so, in your mind, what's the timeline? When does it all come to a head?
No one knows the time.
Well,
Scripture
I know, but
says that.
But is it this year, next year, 10 years, 100 years from now? Because things like this have been going on for a while now. Why is this the one that ushers in Armageddon?
Why? Because first, the prophecy of Israel becoming a nation has been fulfilled in 1948. From then on, things have been escalating, and it's been happening much faster, quicker. Jesus tells us it was like a woman. It's going to be like a woman in birth pains. As that child is about to be delivered, those pains intensify and they're closer together. So these things are happening at a much faster rate. Not only the situation in the Middle East, but also all this stuff ain't global warming, ain't climate change. It's God warning the world, telling the world, wake up, folks, because the end is about to take place.
Yeah, but about
The
to is the
timeline?
part I'm struggling with. Could it
Well,
be 100 years from now? Could it be 1,000 years from now?
I doubt it. I doubt
Yeah,
it.
but so
That's why it's,
Lewis, if you
yeah,
look
and that's
back
why-
at since Israel, 1948 being that year, look, there was Yom Kippur, there was the Golan Heights and Sinai and all that. Why weren't
But
those
look-
things the ushering in the Armageddon?
because one of the main things, if you read it, Zechariah chapter 12, it talks about the world coming against Israel. Look what happened just now at the world courts. They came against Israel. They blamed Israel for genocide and didn't mention anything about Hamas. So it's happening. So don't look that back and say, well, these things that happen, you are fulfilling prophecy that Peter said, because there's going to be markers in the last days saying, when's his return? Everything is the same as it's always been. You're fulfilling what Peter said.
Well, Lewis, I hope you're wrong on this, because obviously that doesn't really suggest anything good coming in the near term. But I am asked by a texter to ask you of a question, by the way.
Yes. What is that?
How are your roosters?
Oh, that's Stephen Tubb.
How are your roosters, man?
They're doing well. And my goats and my chickens, yeah, they're all doing well. The rooster's happy.
Well, I hope for them it's not Armageddon. I hope for them it's not end times either, because they got no place to go, man.
Well, no, but that's why we have to be prepared. And what I say is what Billy Graham has said, Franklin Graham: believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, and you shall be saved, and you won't have to fear the end.
Lewis, thanks for the call, man, and good luck to the other livestock. Update us on that, would you?
Okay.
All right, sir. Talk to you soon. Thanks. Hey, that's Lewis. Thanks for the call, Lewis. I appreciate it. Lewis line is open, 303-696-1971. We're going to get to Ralph and Joe here in just a second. Listen, new year, new you. That's really the approach you should take when you're thinking about reaching out to Rocky Mountain Men's Clinic. They have a website, RockyMountainMen'sClinic.com. What you're going to find out is they're in the business of trying to get that testosterone ramped up for you that may have dropped off, just as a natural function of life. Now, when I hear them do their ads and they record stuff, it's all about erectile dysfunction. It's all about yeah, that's part of it. But in talking with a bunch of dudes who know people that have gone through this and a guy that's gone through, it's way more than that. It increases more than your libido. It increases your energy. You sleep better. It gives you the ability to reap more from the workouts. You now want to do more than you did before. You just take a 10-question true-false quiz on their website. It takes less than 2 minutes. And then if you're eligible, if you're appropriate for it, then you talk with someone at 720-440-7900, 720-440-7900. $99 medical consult. But here's the good news. When you sign up with them, they just roll that into the price of the treatment, so it ends up becoming a free consult. You can check them out at RockyMountainMen'sClinic.com. That's RockyMountainMen'sClinic.com. Let's get right back to the phone lines. Ralph, you're on 710 KNUS. Ralph, what do you think?
Let me take your off speaker. Okay, two things.
Yes,
First of all, the 1983 attack, the Marines were collateral damage. The assistant station chief for the CIA in Lebanon, a guy named Bear, wrote a book about it. And what the target were 7 CIA and State Department experts on the Middle East.
Wow.
Who were in a conference room above where the truck blew up.
Wow.
They have as good intelligence on us, maybe better than we do on them.
How's that
so
possible?
let's not do any tit for tat. It sort of seems like, let's say even the intelligence is even. We still have, and the Israelis still haven't taken out the top commander in Gaza for the enemy. And I'd like to get to my main point now.
Please.
Which is this. Everybody is jumping up and down and saying, let's bomb them, let's do this, let's do that. 2 questions that I want answered first. Where is the money to pay for it coming from? And where are the troops that are going to do it coming from? We have a lot of people who used to yell for, kill a commie for Christ, way back in Vietnam, my war. Problem was none of them showed up. I can give you a list of draft dodgers, starting with Dick Cheney, but I won't. I'll just say that the people who really want to go to war don't want to show up. And so my question for Cornyn and all of those other people is your grandson in the service? Has he been rocketed, shot at, shelled, or IUD'd? And why, if he hasn't been, are you wanting to send somebody else's kid out to die?
Well, keep in mind, too, Senator Lindsey Graham retired as a colonel from the Air Force. He was in, I think, the Air Guard at the end there. Senator Tom Cotton was an officer who I think deployed multiple times during our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's not that these are guys that haven't been subjected to the same decisions that they're offering now. And it's not that they haven't been in harm's way or took the oath. So I'm less concerned with that. If the idea here is, why don't senators have to go fight on the front lines? Oh,
No.
You know, that answers itself.
What I'm saying is you've got 95% of the American population that is not in the military. Okay.
Oh, man, we don't have 5% of the population in the military. Not possible.
I'm sorry?
Well, we can't even have 5% of the population in the military.
Well, that's right. And the Navy now is enlisting troops who have no high school degree.
Or GED. That was something else I was going to mention, too. You're right about that. They continue to lower their standards. All they have to do now is score like a 50 out of 100 or 99 on some, aptitude test. I don't know if it was the ASVAB or something else, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. But the big question is, where does the money come from and where do the troops, the grunts, come from? That's the question nobody is addressing in this.
Why is that relevant to the question of whether we should use missile strikes on the interior of Iran? Because things escalate. Okay.
If we do a tit-for-tat missile strike, well, they can't hit us with missiles. So it's asymmetrical warfare. They're going to hit the troops.
Yeah, but does that mean then that we can't engage in anything like we shouldn't do anything in Ukraine because it's possible we should one day want to bring the troops in there? Look, the answer can't be we're worried about using our military forces because they come from a lower socioeconomic or different demography. I mean, I'm still subjected to all this stuff too. So this isn't
George,
a nothing burger for me.
George, my classmates at the academy would be amazed that I'm going for peace. I'm not. What I'm saying, though, is if we are going to wage war, don't expect that it's somehow going to be limited. Expect that we're going to have to reengage and maybe reinstitute the draft.
So, Ralph, is it your prediction then that if we do a significant strike as being called for by Cotton and Graham and Cornyn and the others, that necessarily is going to lead to boots on the ground and a draft?
No, my question is not, is the first strike. My question is, when we get hit and they hit us again, and then we hit them again, and they hit us again, and we hit them again, look at escalation. That's what I'm worried about. Who is going to draw the line, and where is the line going to be? If we are going to win a war, and we haven't won a war since World War II, look at the two things that we won wars doing. Number one, everybody in the pond draft all the way up to World War II, Civil War and so forth. The second thing is we actually have Congress talk about this and declare war and decide what the goals are.
We've been so far from declaring war, man. Hey, Ralph, do me a favor, buddy. Keep listening and calling in. We have such long conversations. We talk ourselves out of time.
I know.
I got to let you go, and I apologize for that. But Ralph, we got to go. Ralph, thank you for the time. Thanks for the thoughts. Hey, listen, stick around. I'm going to try to get to Joe, Nick, anyone else calling in before the end of the show. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler right back with you here, 710 KNUS. We're going to try to get to the calls that we can. Joe from Denver, you're on 710. What do you think, Joe?
Hi, George. Good morning. Hey, kind of following up on Lewis's call.
Yeah.
One of the things that really disturbs me is the religious aspect of this. In a sense, it's the root cause of all this conflict going on in the region. You have two people staking claims on the same plot of land that has actually been owned, ruled by a dozen different empires over the past 2,000 years. And this idea that, two messiahs are going to come and have a final clash of, titans and somehow, save the world. That driving mentality behind this entire conflict and or the peace process around the Middle East is what is going to kill everybody. And religion has, I think, come to not be a service to man anymore.
So what's your answer? What are we doing?
I certainly agree that the Jews deserved a homeland. Compared to what they control now, I'll often say, you hear a lot of Muslims say, God willing, Allah will make us victorious. Well, for the past 75 years, I would say Allah's point might just be, hey, you know what? These are your cousins. Give them a plot of land and live in peace. But they have decided that little chunk of land up in North Israel was worth 75 years of bloodshed and hatred, all in the name of religion. And while now there's certainly more secular aspects to the entire conflict and political considerations, in the end, it just boils down to this. And that mentality of guys like Lewis and evangelical Christians who, the only reason Trump put our embassy in Jerusalem was to satisfy evangelicals' demands for something to advance the second coming of Christ.
I don't think he's trying to advance the second coming of Christ. I think he is the second coming. That's what he thinks. But I do think that this issue though cannot be logicked away. I mean, faith is an integral part of people's lives, and whether or not you take an extreme view that this is all about end times or not is different than whether or not faith matters. But I don't think you can throw it all out because you've got the extremists in charge of the Muslim nations. By the way, Joe, if you hear that music, we're out of time. I appreciate the phone call. Hey, listen, my thanks to Rose Pugliese, the new minority leader. We also had on Patty Calhoun from Westword, and great conversations with you guys. We'll be back to do it again tomorrow. Billy, you, me, George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.